Morning, welcome. It's now 9 o'clock and I'm handing over to Dr. Ron Botha. Thank you, Dr. Ron.
Thank you, Ranir. Good morning, colleagues and all of our attendees, and thank you very much for joining our event on this Saturday morning. This is our community service is almost over, what now, a virtual conference. We've realized as Judasa and as a committee that we can see that junior doctors are stressed, firstly because there's not really any jobs in the public sector, and people are stressed of what they're going to do when this year ends. And even though we are engaging with provincial and national departments on increasing the number of posts and employing junior doctors, we thought, what can we do in this time and in this space to assist and support you? And this gave birth to this conference where we're going to try and give you some tips and advice on how you can sell yourself on your CV, but also improve yourself to get those interviews, but then also how to do those interviews. But we also thought to give you some tips and advice on how to maybe enter the private sector, but then also give you some advice on what you can do to maybe look outside of clinical medicine. So this conference is brought to you by Judasa, which is the Junior Doctors Association of South Africa. And I'm Ruan Boet, I'm the chairperson of Judasa. During the conference, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A section. So please, during each of the sections and talks that we're having, please post your questions there. Each session will be moderated by some of my Judasa committee members. And then after the speakers in a specific session or topic spoke, we will then take your questions from there. Okay, then without any further ado, I'm going to give over to Dr. Michaela Singh, which is our representative for Judasa in the Western Cape. That will be the moderator for our very first session. Dr. Singh. Okay, it seems Dr. Singh is having technical difficulties, so I'll just help her with now. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker, and this topic is going to focus on Z83, how to prepare yourself for interviews, how to compile your CV, and we're very excited for the speaker that will be speaking on this topic. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Shrikant Peters. He is a medical doctor from Pietermaritzburg in South Africa. He completed his junior years of internship, community service, and medical officer time in primary and district hospital rotations in the major metropolitan cities of Durban, Johannesburg, and Cape Town. After developing a keen interest in health systems management and strategic planning, he completed residency training and qualified as a public health physician in 2019. He holds an MPH in health systems and a BA in politics, philosophy, and economics. He has previously been medical manager of perioperative care, critical care, and transplant services at Groote Schuur Hospital, and is now responsible for clinical informatics at the facility. As an honorary lecturer in public health medicine at the University of Cape Town, and he's also a council member of South African College of Public Health Medicine. He is responsible for advancing the professionalization of medical management, both in South Africa and throughout the wider continent. Dr. Peters, over to you.
Hi, you can hear me and can see my slides?
We can see and we can hear you. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, for some reason, yeah, okay, that's gone. So good morning, everyone. We've just got 20 minutes, so I'm going to be quick. Most of my slides actually focus on career pathing, and when we get to CVs and Z83s and interview presence, I'll give you some insider insight and some caution regarding how to appeal to members of a panel in a highly competitive environment in 2024. So starting out on career pathing, I think, we're all medical graduates. You guys, having been 3 years out of medical school, at least know far more than a lot of the panels that are going to be interviewing you, especially for medical officer roles. You need to know that as graduates of South African universities or through the HPCSA process, for those of you that are foreign graduates, you are highly competent, highly skilled, and highly experienced relative to other graduates in other countries who are far more protected in what they are able to be exposed to in their junior years of practice. So look, you've gone through this time as a medical student where, look, things are generally linear. You are exposed to the basic sciences in your clinical clerkship, and you're graduated as a safe practitioner under supervision. You're now finishing up your clinical apprenticeship where you've done your medical and surgical time. Some of you have carried on with academic work in some form, diplomas, part ones, possibly even. And now you're an independent practitioner and your state obligation is done. And as you are well aware, the state is no longer obliged to employ you anymore. For myself, after a brief time in clinical medicine, it meant moving into public health medicine to examine the structures in the Department of Health, including those responsible for human resource management and budgeting, which are coming increasingly under criticism. So, as interns and community service medical doctors, under the new internship logbook curricula, you would have been exposed to slightly more than just clinical medicine. And I bring this up now, not just for the sake of public health, but also for you to think about how to grow yourselves laterally in your careers, especially seeing as the fact that medical officer posts are in such short supply. So we as clinical doctors are now expected to know far more than our seniors on ethics, human rights, clinical governance, and medical administration. These transversal competencies are things that would stand you in good stead in your clinical careers, looking to get ahead of the pack, but as well as in non-clinical paths, and you'll hear about those later on today. There's a range of competencies within what is called public health medicine. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but suffice to say, these are competencies that stand you in good stead for any clinical specialty. When it comes to the endeavor of medical management and clinical governance, those that would aspire into roles of being self-employed business practitioners, or those looking to senior posts in clinical departments or departments of health in the administration, clinical governance is front and center what we do. It's not simply those boring, this boring organogram that you might have seen or versions of it outlining PHC approaches and referral systems. It's really about enabling good quality patient care. Oftentimes we learn as junior doctors by the things that weren't done and the things that we see go wrong. But how do you, as a manager, hold yourself accountable for correcting those wrongs? How do you make sure that your clinicians, your future junior doctors, will be able to diagnose and manage appropriately with sufficient budget, sufficient resources, sufficient multidisciplinary team support around them to get the desired outcomes that the Department of Health wants? On panels, we're looking for people who are able to articulate systems competencies. So, how does one enable excellence in clinical care? By ensuring we have functional teams. And that's functional teams of doctors and nurses and allied health staff. And we need to know, when you're getting recruited, how you would fit into that team. So simply looking at a CV and listening to an interview is insufficient in differentiating people, because that's what's at the heartbeat of the system. It's very difficult to hear this because we like to measure ourselves quantitatively. How long we've worked in a field, what degrees we have, what diplomas we have, what certificates we have. But in reality, what's going to speak volumes is how well you're known and how well your work ethic is known. And even if you yourself are not known by the panel, how well your references are able to establish you as a candidate of repute. So the reality check. We're in a state of liminality as a health system, but you yourselves as junior doctors. It's the state of being in between. As an article that was published a few years ago in a health systems journal, liminality is this stage of life transitioning. And it came from sociology and the rites of passage that went with journeys from childhood to adulthood. It involves a separation. You're moving away from being a typical junior doctor role. The medical officers are sometimes included in that definition. If you're in management spaces, they include registrars as junior doctors. So it's all relative. But in terms of where you work, the quality of your work, the quality of your co-workers, your ability to find work over the next while, there will be a lot of uncertainty, confusion, and ambiguity. And that's something we've all faced. I think for my class, graduating in 2010, we voluntarily took 6 months off at the end of community service just from burnout. But now there's this concept of permanent liminality where everyone is being forced into this temporary existence between academics, between management of yourself, and management of your career. And being in occupational limbo is very, very difficult to accept. Many transitionings happening in the health services. Employment is increasingly unstable and ambiguous, as well as being disengaged and burnt out once you get into that employment. So it's not as funny as it might seem and as humorous. It's real. You know, there was a paper published a while ago. I'll get into that. You guys have seen what the clinical spaces look like, how you've been stretched, the inability of departments of health to staff services appropriately, and that's going to continue for the next 3 to 5 years over the medium-term expenditure framework. It's not going to get any better. Government expenditure over the next 3 years is growing at about 3.4% for health, which is insufficient to make up for medical inflation, which goes between 10 and 20%. It means that we're going to run out of our consumables budget, and we're going to make up for it by appointing less staff. We have reports of interns and nurses telling us they thought they would have job security going into this degree in this country where we require doctors and nurses. And now that simply no longer exists. There's this concept of tarmacking in the health system where doctors are looking for any opportunities possible. In 2012, when I was an intern, an article came out called Slaves of the State, talking about the deplorable state of facilities and how difficult it is for interns to manage. Fast forward to 2024, and as a medical manager, we are seeing people offer up their services for free just to get a foot in the door. It's terrible. But the Hunger Games are real. So we have policies and we recruit and select according to policy. There are various steps in the recruitment and selection process, starting with advertising. So a lot of painstaking effort goes into advertising for a post. You have to be very careful when you read a post advert to understand what the requirements are, what the expectations are, what the job description is, what the key responsibility areas are. You must remember that we are at a disadvantage. We are for 3 years employed without any interviews at all. It means you go into quite a senior post in the system as a medical officer in your first interview often. You don't know what it's like to be shortlisted. You don't know how to be shortlisted. You don't know what it's like to be interviewed, and how to go about translating that interview, which is very difficult to get in the first place, into an appointment. Just by way of measure, I manage critical care, the emergency center, and have been assisting in other departments in the hospital. Currently, for every single medical officer post we have now opened up since not appointing for 9 months, we have on average 100 medical officer applicants. All of them well qualified and on paper able to do the job. We need to work out complex formulae to shortlist down to sometimes 10, maybe 20 individuals that we can interview. And that's oftentimes for only 2 to 3 posts. So getting shortlisted, I mean, it goes without saying that you need to have all the documents they require. Your Z83 and your CV goes to the person that is indicated on the advert. If you're using the e-portal, it can be very, very concerning because you don't necessarily get feedback from that portal. However, the chair of the interview process or their personal assistant is sometimes labeled on the advert, and it's always good just to follow up with a call or an email to the facility HR suite or the medical manager just to ensure that your application has been received. You don't want to pressurize people. You don't want to falsify information on your Z83. You don't want to change aspects of your Z83, especially related to your demographics or your disability. A history of all of your previous Z83s is captured by HR departments across the country, and they will verify whether your demographic is reported consistently or not. In terms of writing a medical CV, there are lots of tools available online. I have made use of a CV from Johns Hopkins. But basically the same flow exists. Be led by the job advert. You can have your base CV, and for many, this might be the first one that you're writing, but tailor it to the job advert that you're applying for. Especially look at the requirements section, because oftentimes they will be shortlisting you based on that requirements section. For those that are following e-recruitment, there will be a series of short questions, yes, no, that you need to answer, and that also goes towards shortlisting. It can be as innocuous as saying, do you speak or are you conversant in at least 2 of the 3 official languages of a province or the country? And if you say yes or no to those, you can, in effect, not be shortlisted. I've seen that happen to juniors. I've seen that happen to seniors. But in your CV, you need a clear layout of your experience and your theoretical knowledge. Any papers that you might have published, it needs to be clearly signposted so that people who are doing shortlisting processes can go through it. We don't want to be asking ourselves questions as to the nature of a rotation that you've done. If you are applying for a post in critical care or emergency center or medicine, we're generally looking for experience in those departments or in facilities that are adjacent to those departments. We don't want to go and look and see abstract places of work which are not very clear as to what exactly you've done. So if you haven't necessarily worked in the department of your choice, you need to stipulate what your practices were, what you did during your community service, during any medical officer time that you might have under your belt. That is in line with the post that you're applying for. If at all possible, and it's not always possible, get a copy of the job description that you're looking for. And I say that because you need to write a CV looking at the job description. You also need to interview according to the job description. When you're in the interview, you will be faced with a set of questions based on the key responsibility areas for that individual's post. Those KRAs are taken from a job description, and they are weighted according to the job description. As I've said, everyone is clinically competent. Clinical competence is not 100% of the job description. You need to be aware if there's clinical governance aspects, if there's teaching and training required of the job, if it's a joint appointment role, which obviously all registrars are. You need to be aware that a research portfolio, operational research, even leadership experience is extremely important to be able to have in your arsenal and to be able to speak to, however basic your experience in those roles might be. Extracurricular experience, you can tack it on to the end of your CV. It rounds out, gives a feel for yourself as a holistic practitioner. And it may be a question, sometimes non-scoring, something non-threatening at the start of an interview process where you can establish rapport with a panel. In the interviews, as I've said, we want to know, have you worked in a clinical department similar to the one that you're interviewing? Have you performed any research in the field? So previously, when I started as a medical manager, I had started just at the end of my public health registrar time, and was tickled by the fact that the people I was interviewing were by and large members of my own medical school class, and medical school classes that were in other universities that I had either done internship and community service with. And it was very difficult for them to understand what exactly was required, because there would be at most sometimes one clinical question. You need to focus on the major, basic, common presenting complaints and the differential diagnoses associated with each. You also need to fundamentally understand what is safe practice and what is at-risk practice, because those kinds of things are littered throughout each of the clinical competency questions. There is generally a research question in all of the registrar application posts. We want to know, do you have an idea? Have you collected data? Have you put in a research protocol? Have you published articles? And as much as that applies to registrars who actually generally need to have something in the bag and have already talked to a supervisor and possibly established rapport with the department already, it's not going to hurt for medical officers. And with the competition in posts being even higher for medical officers at this point in time, I would suggest getting involved in research, in clinical governance activities, in other leadership roles in internship and community service, knowing very well that I'm speaking to people in November of their community service year, and the leadership roles. So whether or not you are going into another place of employment next year, whether you're going to be self-employed, whether you have a gap that's going to allow you to branch out and do some months of volunteer time, which is unfortunately not always voluntary, take up those roles, get involved, establish rapport with heads of department, consultants, registrars in the departments that you would like to be at. Supply and demand is a law of economics. We do not have enough supply of jobs, and demand is in excess. We've got people volunteering for posts, and as unfair as the system is, people who can afford to volunteer will get their foot in the door. Even if you can't volunteer on a full-time basis, go and work in the private facilities, establish rapport with the departments, teach on the undergraduate curricula, be willing to do tuts, find a way to establish yourself so that people know you, that you're not an unknown quantity, more than your ability to come across as a strong and a competent and a confident doctor in an interview. What will speak volumes is humility and acceptance of the fact that the system is constrained. And what makes a good clinical practitioner in South Africa is the fact that you can deliver a cost-effective service under pressure with speed, sometimes as required. So for every question that you're asked, determine which KRA you're being asked. Have a framework response ready based on your clinical frameworks, but also do a bit of reading around research and research protocols and leadership and governance. Conflict resolution is a very, very popular topic because with the budget constraints and burnout that staff are facing, we always like to ask staff how they themselves are resilient, but we're also looking for emotional intelligence in dealing with complicated problems on the floor. Listen to questions very carefully. Take time to write them down if you need to. Always pose the question back to the panel if you're not certain exactly what is being asked of you. Pay attention to specific cues, especially if you're redirected in a question. It means that there's something that you're not getting at, and try and be calm in the way that you answer your questions. Be collected. At the end of an interview, if it's gone well, if it's gone poorly, obviously you want to know how much longer it's going to take before you hear. In the interview process, sometimes what's something that is advised to ask is, how could I do better? What are you looking for? In as much as that's a good thing to ask at the end of an interview, it's even better to offer the panel or the chair of the panel time to come and talk to them after the interviews, recruitment and selection has wrapped up, whether you're successful or not, and to see where you can add value to a department. It doesn't get easy. It's a very, very brief discussion, and I'm happy to answer questions and respond on email if there's specific questions to policies and SOPs. So good luck and all the best, everyone. Thank you. Ruhan or Michaela, hi.
Hi. Thank you so much, Dr. Peters. I see that we don't have any questions at the time in our chat. But yeah, do you suggest that we do anything specific during this waiting period? Because I note that the ComServe doctors may not be placed in time for their medical officer posts or their registrar posts. Do you suggest that they take this time to really work on that CV and make sure that they do the most that they can? Or do you suggest that they start studying? Or what is the number one thing that you'd like them to do during that waiting period?
Yeah. So you have to do, you have to multitask. You need to focus on your research, or getting involved with people who are doing research. If you're looking at academic or state sector medicine, you need to obviously have a CV prepped. At the end of my community service, imagined that someone who had done 6 months in casualty and 6 months in medicine would be in hot property. And I shopped around to 10 different hospitals in Gauteng where my wife was doing her community service and got shown the door. and eventually was appointed in, I think, August of that year, luckily. Something that we're seeing a lot, and I think a lot of people are going to go into the private sector, they're going to do locum jobs. You need to keep an academic framework approach to what you're doing. A lot of what we're seeing are people in the private sector working on shifts, working outside of the country, wanting to come back and establish themselves in a permanent role as a medical officer, moving into registrar time. And it's very clear to panels when you haven't been part of an academic department, where we can't see what guidelines and algorithms are guiding your thinking, and being aligned to the department that you would like to see yourself specialize in one day, or even be a medical officer, it speaks volumes. So being known, your work being known, your approaches to problems being understood by the panel that you are in front of is extremely, extremely important. And we can see very clearly when someone has experience and does not have an academic approach. And that's what we're looking for in the big tertiary centers where a lot of people are coming to look for appointment. But if you've got operational research, clinical governance, anything you've assisted a head of department or clinical unit or a manager with will stand you in good stead in the district and primary care platforms as well. So even if you're in the private sector, establish rapport, keep contacts with the public sector that you're interested in those departments, and have a CV and a Z83 on hand, and even drop it off with secretaries and heads of department, whether you've seen an advert or not. That time will come and you can always update it, and they are obliged to reach out to you to say, look, our posts have opened up now. Do you have an updated CV for us?
Amazing. Thank you so much. There's a question that came in regarding the common errors that are found on that Z83. Can you just speak a little bit to that?
Sure. So look, we've seen, as I've said, we've seen people change their demographics on Z83s, which is a red flag for lots of panel members. If you're recorded as a certain gender and a certain race, it's a system that's here to stay for the time being. But basically, we hold you to your own consistency. So if you change that halfway through, there will be some uncomfortable questions for you in the interview before you start your questions. So best to just stick with one thing, and whatever you choose now as your first interview process, be prepared to stick with it for the rest of your career until the policy might change. The formats for the CV, I think the most important thing is to signpost. You want a CV, and it's a generational thing. I think a lot of people are putting very big photos of themselves and modeling type poses, which is a bit odd for people of an older age group. I mean, we tend to just look at the raw data coming out of a CV. Friendly face doesn't hurt, obviously, but you want the focus of your CV to be your experience and maybe your theoretical knowledge. You need to signpost very clearly. And if we can't tell what your rotation has entailed, under that, what you've said is maybe ship practice or emergency center work, you can outline what were your tasks in that role. Fundamentally, what did you do on a daily basis? What kinds of procedures, what diagnoses, who did you refer to, what were you responsible for the department in terms of clinical governance activities like M&Ms as well. Many departments allowing supernumerary medical officers. It's difficult. It's the reality. It's unfortunate that we're stuck with this system. And even the recruitment and selection policies for supernumeraries are not in place. So oftentimes you will get a supernumerary appointment without an interview process. And unfortunately, it means that those that can take on supernumerary roles will be a known measure to the department and will be able to establish themselves in teams. Now, supernumerary contracts don't have to be full-time contracts. You can apply for a volunteer contract. So even if you're doing private practice work in a private sector facility, oftentimes paying slightly better than public sector, so you don't necessarily have to do 40 hours. You can offer some time to a public sector department. It doesn't necessarily have to be your sole body and mind. You can do 4 hours a week or whatever it is you can possibly stomach, but more to establish yourself and your work ethic with people in the department, which speaks volumes to panels. Yeah, So no, the constraints are real, and I see those in all the questions coming up. Maybe, Michaela, if you also go through them and just see which ones I haven't answered yet.
Dr. Peters, I've gone through the questions. Guys, we will be typing answers to you. The session has unfortunately now come to an end. So, Dr. Peters, thank you so much for your valuable insights and your practical advice. And I believe that everyone here has gained a lot from your expertise, and they know how to craft a standout CV and hopefully have mastered the Z83 form. And also will be able to hold a wonderful interview presence when they eventually go out for their future job interviews. We truly appreciate your time and the knowledge you've shared with us today. I'd like to hand over to our next moderator, Dr. Tumisang Malete, who will be guiding us through the upcoming session. Dr. Malete, over to you.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Michaela. So I'll be moderating the second session, which is Doctor on the Move, essentially navigating the locum life in public and private. So what we're trying to do with this session is more to give insights on what opportunities exist outside the public sector. As we know, the current constraints, and this gives an opportunity to be aware that this is actually an option. And to our speaker for this session is Dr. Isaac Maria from ER Consulting. And just a bit on Dr. Isaac Maria is that Dr. Isaac Maria graduated from the University of Pretoria with the MBCHB in 1993. He also went to complete his MBA at WITS in 2009 and is a registered professional logotherapist, having graduated at UNISA in 2018. He has extensive international experience as a clinician, having worked in Southeast Asia, the United Kingdom, and various Southern African countries. He has also worked as a medical director for International SOS before becoming a shareholder and also founding member of ER Consulting, Inc., in Beck's Doctors Hart and Partner in 2007. Apart from being a director for ER Consulting, he is also director of the FCS Group of companies, the management company for various practices and healthcare companies in South Africa. His ER Consulting is also currently the largest employer of emergency clinicians in the private healthcare emergency medicine sector in South Africa, employing more than 300 practitioners in both part-time and full-time employment, managing 24 emergency units across South Africa through the practice of the SHI Incorporated. First Care Solutions are also firmly embedded in the virtual healthcare solutions in South Africa, with a firm vision of employing information technology systems in revolutionizing virtual healthcare in South Africa. Dr. Maria, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malete. If you could just confirm, can you clearly hear me?
Yes, I can, Doc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the privilege of being invited to the session this morning. And I just want to repeat what the previous speaker has said in terms of the competitiveness in the job sector out there. As you heard, ER Consulting was started in 2007 by myself and two colleagues. And we had, in those days, actually quite a lot of difficulty recruiting people because doctors were in very scarce supply. And also remuneration was very different from those days to now. Fast forward to about 2017, 2018, when things started to change dramatically. We now find, like Dr. Peters have said, about 100 to 200 applicants for a single position that we have. As Dr. Malete has said, we are the largest employer of private emergency medicine practitioners and also other practitioners in South Africa. So the largest employer outside of the government. And we obviously welcome all opportunities for all people to join us. And our junior colleagues are very welcome to join us as well. Just give me one moment and I'm going to share my screen for a short presentation and take some questions after that. Can I just confirm that you can see my screen?
We can still see your camera and no screen sharing on our side.
Okay.
So Doctor, right at the bottom of the screen, there's a green icon.
Yeah. Yes, I am clicking on it, and
And then you need
I'm
to
doing.
select what you want to share.
Okay. I do this every day, and then all of a sudden, things change. Let us see if
We can see it now. You must
there you
just
go.
clean it in. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. There
There
you
you
go,
go.
colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So as we said in the introduction, we are all about ER consulting, Dr. Alton Partners, although we also run various other practices across South Africa, but I'm going to basically put my emphasis on the practice called ER consulting. So welcome to your future career in emergency medicine, and this is mostly going to focus in emergency medicine. And our vision in ER consulting to be the best, most innovative emergency medicine corporation in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. One or two things about that vision are the words most innovative and medicine corporation. So we are not only a medical practice, we are also very business driven, and we are extremely innovative, especially in the last 2 years, where we've embraced the big wave of artificial intelligence or AI solutions that have engulfed the whole of medicine, not only emergency medicine worldwide. And just to Dr. Peter's point earlier, we are very focused in our interviews about knowledge and future thoughts about how will the emergency medicine and how will medicine look in 10 years. And I am always very surprised to find that doctors generally do not necessarily think beyond how medicine is going to look into the future. We need to understand that our whole landscape out there is changing at a pace that even us trying to be the most innovative private emergency corporation in South Africa have difficulty in keeping up with. We've recently introduced AI in note keeping. We are now introducing AI in radiology interpretation, AI in ECG interpretation, and we've already introduced AI in skincare diagnosis and treatment. So AI is coming to a theater near you, and please be aware of such and be at least able to speak about it knowledgeable in an interview. So our background, we operate with professional due care, focused innovation strategies and optimized business structures to ensure unprecedented client satisfaction. Very important to us as well is not only your clinical CV, but your CV in terms of what is your bedside manner, what is your vision for the future, how do you interact with your clients and patients, and how do you interact with your colleagues, fellow healthcare providers, and then, of course, as I said before, the innovative healthcare. So the overall structure, and we don't need to go into that too much, but First Care Solutions are the company that is a Pty Limited. It forms the administrative management of the medical practice. We do credit control, scheduling, marketing, HR for practices. We also do electronic medical records and patient management solutions. We have dashboards that we offer to our clients and our hospitals, and then a central repository system as well as clinical governance services. We have a specialist practice called ER Specialist Governance Incorporated, a specialist emergency medicine practice that's also extremely involved in the new concept of hospital at home, which is being rolled out in South Africa in large scale. In fact, projections show that the largest hospital group in South Africa within the next 5 to 10 years will actually be your own home. And we are able, through innovative AI technology, to manage you at home. Not going to go into that too much, but we are probably admitting as much people at home as we are admitting into brick and mortar traditional things. And it's AI that make all of that possible to us. I cannot overemphasize the importance of AI and technology in the future of healthcare. Then we also have the African Institute of Emergency Medicine, or AIM, where we are a training provider. We also do medical short courses. Many of you may have already been through our AIM training center. And then, of course, we have SH Inc. Healthcare. So through SH Inc. Healthcare, we do primary healthcare. It also does a lot of telemedicine, which is a very old word. We talk about virtual healthcare these days, where we offer solutions to people on virtual platforms, be it the good old-fashioned telephone or more modern devices like what we are doing at the moment on virtual platforms. Where are we, just in terms of our emergency medicine centers, our bricks and mortar? I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just showing you where we are in terms of physical location in South Africa. We have 24 emergency medicine units. This is the backbone of our company and is where we started from in 2005, actually, although we formally became known as ER Consulting in 2007. And for those of you that have an entrepreneurial feel in yourself, we started in 2005 as 3 practitioners running only the Sandton Mediclinic in Johannesburg. And today, 15 years later, we are the largest medical corporation in Southern Africa in terms of employment, as well as also flights. We supply international flight doctors as well. So we have various career options, and I'm aware of time, so I'm just going to give you a quick outline of that. You can become a permanent full-time doctor with us. That is your standard 160, 180 hours contract. With that, you get all the benefits of a into too much. Dr. Molete has mentioned locum doctor. We are your shifts as per available. You are getting paid for hours work, but there's no additional benefit. We can also have fixed locum contracts where we offer specific hours and specific locations to people. So what's the benefits of I think that in government, we do, although everybody does that, it's not an innovative thing anymore. Sundays, public holiday rates, which cover your indemnity insurance. And I don't have enough time to talk about medical legal pitfalls that you may fall in. We have a medical legal department that assists other practices as well as our own practice and doctors with indemnity insurance. We have a support zone. In old-fashioned terms, it's a call center, 24 hours a day, where we offer support to our doctors, either clinical support or administrative support where needed, and also where we times, etc., how many patients we have in our emergency unit in St. George's at the moment, as an example. We can do that through our support. You know, there are so many patients on duty. The doctor is, so many doctors on duty. The doctor is seeing X, Y, and Z at the moment. There are 10 people waiting. The average waiting time is 40 minutes, etc., with the diagnoses, so that we are able to manage emergency units in real from our support zone. And then I've mentioned the senior on call. You always have access to a senior clinician, especially learning and accreditation. We have our own orthotic EV. And your ability on a specific clinical scorecard will determine your remuneration in our company. So if you ask me how much do we pay, and that's normally not a question, just a tip to ask in your interview, but your determined by your clinical scorecard and the validity, or let's say the strength of your CV. We also have national through our African Institute of Emergency Medicine, which is part of your salary if you were to join us.
Hello, Dr. Maria, are you still there?
Dr. Maleta, it seems like we lost Dr. Maria. I mean, it might be something wrong with his connection. Do you want to give him a minute or two just to try and reach?
Sure. Yeah, sure. That's why he left. He's probably rejoining shortly. Thanks.
Okay. Sibonelo, can you maybe try and get a hold of Dr. Maria again, just to see if he can join us again? I see Dr. Maria is on again.
Morning, colleagues. Sorry for that. I'm not too sure where you may have lost me. Can you hear me again?
We can hear you. We lost the presentation on our side.
Sure. I'm going to colleagues, I'm not entirely certain where we lost one another. Perhaps you can just guide me on that.
It was round about the last 2 minutes of your presentation.
Right. I'm just quickly going to...
Opportunities.
Yes.
No
Yeah.
opportunities, yes.
Yes. I'm gentlemen, or ladies and gentlemen, I'm aware of time, so I'm just going to skip through the last 4 slides very quickly. Flights, clinical growth and management, primary healthcare, telemedicine, and med-air is what we do. Hospitalist work, ultrasound. We also have lecturing opportunities for our more senior colleagues through the African Institute of Emergency Medicine. Our African Institute of Emergency Medicine is CETA and AHA accredited, gives you all the courses as listed over there, and quite a few more. One that we are quite excited about is our EMAT course, which is the ATLS equivalent and now accepted in South Africa as the equivalent by most institutions. And then your CHEM program, which is the Continued Education for Medical Professionals. It's a 24-month program that we enroll all our doctors in automatically if you join us as part of our continued education. Right, if you are interested, your minimum requirement is your MBCHP, registration with the HPCSA in the practice, independent practitioners, basic knowledge and experience, and you need to have currency of your minimum emergency medicine certificates. And this year we have also increased our minimum requirements to having been qualified post-ComServe or having experience post-ComServe of at least 6 months. You are still welcome to apply to us, even if you don't have post-ComServe 6 months experience. We can go through all the factors covered by the previous speaker, where you can write your entry exams, because it's also based on an exam. You can write your entry, we call it exams. It's actually a questionnaire, but it is a 2-hour online exam that you need to do, which does not only cover clinical questions. There are some open-ended questions as well, where you need to give your views on the future of healthcare, etc. There's no right or wrong questions when it gets to that, but it shows to us that you are a rounded individual with your foot with your foot firmly into technology and into the future. So you can go through all of those. Our recruitment process ends with the orientation process. You also need to do 2 shifts on the shop floor with a senior doctor before we would actually offer you a CV. And we often find, or sometimes find, that individuals may do well in the interview. They may do well through their CVs or the questionnaires, but then they fail the online or the on-shop floor orientation just because of things like the bedside manner, interaction with patients, presentability. So don't forget that that's extremely important as well. And then if you would like to consider a career in ER consulting, there's our contact details. You can also Google us, but I'm sure this presentation would also be available through our colleagues. So thank you very much for that, and I'm more than happy to take any questions if time permits. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maria, for that session. Quite informative. At the moment, there aren't any questions in the Q&A section. I see, okay, an email and everything was posted. So I think if there's no questions at the moment, not sure if there's anything else you'd like to add, Dr. Maria, because to move on to the next section.
Sure. No, I'm really excited about, again, to Dr. Peter's point, the quality and the caliber of our young doctors out there. And you must realize that it is very important to take Dr. Peter's words to heart. It is very, very demanding, and the environment out there, there's lots of competition. I remember being taught at university recently that you must always remember, our lecturer always said to me, there's always someone smarter out there. Don't forget that. So please be the smartest one, because that will stand you in good stead. I also see that people have the impression that I am a doctor, I'm well qualified, I'm going to be in high demand out there. And are very disappointed then when they don't get the job at their first interview. Do realize that it's difficult out there, and there are hundreds of people vying for those positions. Make sure your layout of your CVs are excellent. Make sure that you're knowledgeable, not only about healthcare, but we're also looking for rounded individuals for the future of our company and for the future of healthcare in South Africa. Thank you.
Just a couple of questions. We have a minute. The question is, are the requirements for locums the same as a permanent post?
Yes, absolutely, because the patient needs a doctor. He does not necessarily know that the doctor is a locum or a permanent, so the requirements are exactly the same. Unless you are a senior doctor, we will normally start with a locum contract and then progress to a permanent position at a later stage.
And there's a question on how many attempts do you have for the test that you spoke about, the 2-hour test that
Sure.
they need to be taken. Yeah.
Sure. You have 2 attempts, but they must be at least 7 days apart. If you have failed your second attempt, we will reconsider your application in 1 year's time.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Maria. Due to time, we'll have to move on to the next
Thank you so much.
session. Thank you so much for being present and presenting, giving us an informative session.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we're moving on to the next session, which will be moderated by my colleague, Dr. Simon Fraser. Thank you. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks to Misang, and thank you especially to our speakers so far. I think this has been a fantastic conference. Can everyone hear me okay? Just to give a thumbs up or just acknowledge that people can hear me.
But Dr. Fraser is a little bit soft. I don't know if you can.
Louder?
A little bit, yeah. Thank you.
I'll speak a little bit louder. Sorry about that. So I just want to repeat what I said, and thank you so much to Misang for that session, and also to our speakers so far. I think this has been an incredible opportunity to learn and glean, and I'm taking notes. I'm learning as well. So thank you so much for your time sacrifice and giving of your Saturday. Hopefully this is a really fruitful time for all of us as we go into our post-ComServe years. So thank you to Misang for introducing me. My name is Simon. I am a ComServe doctor in the Northwest Province and serve as the Judasa Northwest Province rep. And it's my honor and privilege today to take us through the journey into being an entrepreneur in medicine and being the manager of your own private practice. And statistically, most of the people who are working in government now will not be working in government in future. They will be either managing their own practice as a GP or possibly as a specialist in future. So this is important for all of us, maybe not specifically for next year, but definitely sometime in future, we will be managing our own practices and we'll be business leaders of a staff team of at least one, being ourselves. So thank you so much for our speakers. I'm going to just introduce them one by one before they each speak, but we're going to be covering the aspects of running a practice as a general practitioner, and then some of the business side of things, some of the finance side of things, how to fund a practice, how to bank as a professional besides just your personal banking, but as a practice. So we're going to cover a lot of ground. Let's buckle in, let's pay attention, and let's learn from our first speaker. I'm going to introduce her now. Her name is Dr. Jana Eckstein. She's a general practitioner in Northern Paarl. And Dr. Jana studied medicine at Tygerberg Stellenbosch University. She spent her final year as part of the Rural Clinic School program in Worcester and graduated in 2020 with a cum laude. She is also a published author of her undergraduate research study, which covered acral melanoma, and has a COVID-19 study being prepped for publication at present. Her internship followed swiftly. Sorry, my screen just died on me, and brought about an Eastern Cape adventure with time spent at Freya Cecilia Mkhwane complex in East London. Finally, her ComServe brought her back to her hometown in the Western Cape, where she experienced primary healthcare in all its glory at Swartland Hospital in Malmesbury in 2023. Dr. Jana sees herself as hardworking, endlessly positive, and creating her own happiness wherever she goes. Due to the absence of government posts available in hospitals, she embraced the opportunity that came her way and opened her own general practitioner practice in Northern Paarl from scratch on the 10th of January 2024. And ever since then, it has been both her biggest challenge and her greatest blessing. I love that. So Dr. Jana Eckstein, thank you so much for your time and sacrificing some of your Saturday morning to teach us. I'm especially happy because you are somebody who is very recently post-ComServe. Can you hear us?
Morning, Simon. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're going to turn the radio over to you. So take it away.
Thank you, Simon. Are you going to share the slide? Must I share the slide?
You can share it from your side, Dr. van Rensburg, it's fine.
Okay. Let's just share quickly. Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm practicing as Dr. Exte and I'm married van Rensburg, so don't get confused. So I'm Dr. Jana, and I'm 1 year post-ComServe, as Simon introduced me now, and I've been practicing in my own practice for 10 months and 1 week today. We opened our doors on the 10th of January after a very busy and administrative December. And in retrospect, my timeline might have been a bit unrealistic, but with the backing of family and knowledgeable professionals, I made it work. So my first take-home message is that before you start thinking of opening a practice, you have to realize that you are going to need a lot of two things: courage and cash. And then patience and patience and patience until the actual patients arrive, and then more patience for 3 years. The first 1,000 days is also applicable in business. That is the average timeline for a new business to become successful and self-sustainable. One thing I wish I can tell interns and ComServes at the start of your years is save your money. You are earning the largest salary you will earn in the next 10 years, especially if you move to the private sector. My cash came from my savings of second year internship and ComServe. In retrospect, it was a really challenging journey thus far, and my irritable bowel acted up and I started clenching, but nonetheless, I would recommend it to anyone. Now, let's move on to the semantics and the detailed layout of what is needed to open a practice. I compacted it into one slide so you can just take a picture and have the note at hand. There are 3 sections of importance in the process: registrations, systems, and business management. Regarding registration, so firstly, you will need your HPCSA certificate with a red stamp at the bottom, classifying you as an independent practitioner. You needed to get your practice number and have to submit it to every submission. By God's grace, I got mine. It was posted to the cliques of my hometown, and I just got a pickup SMS. By now, you all know the HPCSA headquarters very well, so you have my sympathy. I have no tips, unfortunately. The business registration, you have to decide on a name, and then you register your business as an incorporation, an Inc. The smart business people reports a practice is not a sellable asset, and thus an incorporation is appropriate. Then your business bank account. You need proof of your business registration for this step. Then SARS is also involved. SARS obviously needs to know you are registering a business, and then largely you register for pay as you earn at SARS initially. When you reach a turnover of 1 million per year, you can now register for VAT. Because a medical practice doesn't sell goods, we sell a service, you don't have much VAT to claim back initially, and you will just pay 15% per payment if you're registered without any back claims. Thus, the sums are in your favor to only register after you exceeded the turnover of 1 million per year. Then you need a rental contract. I put that in brackets because it's not specifically, I think, necessary, but it's necessary to get your practice number. They all want to know where you're going to practice. So you need to actually have a plan before you start registering for the practice. The BHF stands for the Board of Healthcare Funders. So this is this big round place where all the medical aids are. And the understanding is that if I register at the BHF and I get my practice number for being a general practitioner or a specialist, the practice numbers differs. They will communicate to the medical aids my company registration, my banking number, my banking details, and that smooths out everything. But from first-hand experience, it unfortunately does not pull through efficiently. And you only learn that by submitting to medical aids who haven't received correspondence, and they then reply with the email requesting all the admin. The first 3 months in practice, you really do learn exponentially. Then medical aids. So you can go to the trouble to also send them all the admin beforehand and not finding out like me throughout 3 months. And then with the medical aids, it's also important to know that you can sign contracts with individual medical aids, like GEMS and Discovery, for example, the bigger aids, because it will be the bulk of your patient load. There are some advantages, there are some disadvantages. Initially, I was advised against it. And when you don't sign with them, they pay your claimed amount into the patient's bank account, and they go buy groceries or go on holiday with their medical aid reimbursement and don't pay the doctor. So in retrospect, I would definitely recommend signing a contract with 1 or 2 of the larger medical aids that you can anticipate is going to be commonly found in your patients. Then suppliers. So suppliers is the people that will give you your medicines, your machines, your medical needs. And they all also want to know what's your practice number, your bank account number, your business registration number. And examples of that is Aptekor and Transfarm. They are very nice. They deliver within 24 hours and you can't actually get anything without them. Then we move on to systems. So systems basically encounter software, things that makes your life easy for you. So a billing system is the software on your laptop where you load the patient's information and medical aid details, and the billing system is integrated with all the medical aids. So you submit the claim and the remittances eventually pulls through as payments, and so you can easily trace your debtors. Then accounting assistance, unfortunately MBCHB did not prepare us for anything business or accounting wise, and school accounting is very insufficient. You need someone to repeatedly be able to explain the figures to you to assist with integration of your Zero program, which is your accounting program, the one that I use, with your bank account and your HubDoc app, which you scan all your slips and things with. So this takes some practice and takes repeatedly explanation. It wasn't so easy like in medicine we say see one, do one, teach one. The accounting did not come as natural for me personally. And then your personnel. So you need a secretary. For instance, I only have a secretary and me. We are only 2 in our practice, but if you are thinking very large, you might need locums. So that's what your personnel will entail. Then your nearest hospital support. So I'm in Paul. So you need to know who is on call, which specialist is on call every day, because crisis does walk through your door. Call rosters, especially over the weekends, and if you can admit there as a GP, or where is the nearest psych facilities for admission. Those are all important things. Usually the big hospitals like Mediclinic, they have a hospital liaison, so your aim must be to find that liaison person, and they can usually communicate all of this. Then x-ray, sonars, labs. In your environment, you need to know how all those things work, because you obviously won't have it at your practice. They all have different forms, they all have different systems, they all have different apps with different passwords, and you need to also get that sorted actually before you open your doors. It's difficult to tell a patient, I don't know, let me just figure it out, and it just wastes time. Then business management. Business management is the fun part, but unfortunately the least important part. So firstly, your branding. I got a professional because I think I was overwhelmed at that point with all the other important admin. But nowadays with Canva and similar apps, I really am confident that you can do it yourself. When you think about your branding, think about color psychology. That's actually a thing. And with medicine, we have specific colors, and colors bring forth specific feelings and messages. So just be mindful of that. And legibility from a distance, and put up a big board. Patients like big legible boards. And then advertising in my environment, I thought about school calendars, Facebook, Instagram. The nearest churches also has calendars. I emailed the schools. I visited businesses with my business cards. Unfortunately, you have to sell yourself a bit to get feet in the door. And then, what do they call it? Word of mouth. Then word of mouth does the thing. But it will unfortunately take 6 months before you get to word of mouth of hard work. You can't sit in your practice and just hope and pray someone will walk in here. You have to go out and meet people so they know you are in town. And then lastly, housekeeping. So unfortunately, when you have a practice, it's not like a hospital. You walk in and you walk out and everything is just clean. So remember the nitty-gritties, the cleaning stuff, the service, cleaning services, a cleaning lady, your electricity, your water, your furniture, your niceties. Patients like it when it's nice and welcoming and happy inside. And that just takes a little bit of extra thought. And I also think it speaks a lot to you as person. And with that, you can individualize your practice a bit. So yeah, in short, that is basically how to become your own boss, a doctor's guide. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Doc. That was an excellent session. Very informative. I think you were incredibly funny as well and wonderfully relatable. So thank you for that. We do have the opportunity to ask you some questions. I know you're very pressed for time, so we're not going to keep you too long. Thank you so much for the sacrifice already. While everyone's typing their questions into the Q&A box for the seminar, let me ask you some of the questions that came up while I was listening. I was taking notes. So you mentioned that there are systems in place that need to be there for billing and accounting. You know, we're not used to charging for a service because we've been working in the public health system. We don't handle money. We don't touch a cent, you know, as an intern in the ComServe. So I know that you mentioned having a billing and accounting software. Can you speak to maybe some of the systems? I know one of my hats is as host of the Dr. Coffee podcast, and we do have a sponsor who is in the practice management and billing software side. But how did you find somebody to help you out? Like, how did you research that?
Okay, I had an accountant which I spoke to, and he basically does billing for practices. So he gave me 4 software options that he wanted me to choose from, and he based these top 4 out of creditability and registrations. He had his reasons. So I had those 4, and then I got my secretary, and she was a secretary for a physio already and was very familiar with the software she used there. So I just took that software, and it was one of the top 4, and people praised the software. So yes, now I'm using that software for this year, but I'm thinking about changing to new software in the new year, which is, unfortunately, in private, everything is rand and cent. What's that English? Rand and cents. Money talks here. So if you can do things cheaper in practice, then your turnover will be bigger, and eventually the wins, apologies, my English is super rusty, will be bigger. So that's why I'm thinking about moving. And also, what does your software encompass? So my software currently only does the billing. So submitting the claims and doing the remittance. If I want to do my files electronically, which I don't do yet, then you need a software that also encompasses this. The current software I use charges extra for that, but certain other softwares includes everything. And I would actually recommend from the get-go. I was too scared because we're used to paper-based. Everything in state is paper. We are scared of a laptop. There isn't something like a laptop even in the hospitals. But I saw now how quickly your file cupboard gets full, and it's just slip and a lot of paper and a lot of printing. And when I can go on holiday and I can take my laptop and I have my patients' folders with me if there's a crisis or they phone you, because unfortunately I am now the people's doctor, and the people's doctor has to be halfway available at all times. So I would like to have my filing system also with me, with the billing and everything on my laptop. So that is just my take on it. I'm thinking about changing now. And then Soma, to tell you, because you said you never asked for money before in state, how do I know what to bill a patient? How did I decide what to bill a patient? So you might ask around what the other GPs in town ask. Then you try to be a competitor, obviously, and not overcharge. And you think about the area you're in. What is the population in your area going to be able to afford? Because I have a lot of cash patients that doesn't have medical aid, but they are willing to pay. And I have a special rate for the very lower income clinic patients that prefer to do their clinic things for me. But luckily, if it's your practice, you can decide. So I did decide. I made a few rough sums, and now we're doing that. But if you sign a contract with the medical aids, like I recommended, they cap you, and you have to ask medical aid tariffs. So that is the big downfall with signing, because certain medical aids really do not pay a lot for a consultation. I will not name and shame or use values, but you will not be able to cover your overheads with those consultation fees. And then your cash patients are actually the important part of the practice. Their money comes in immediately. So it's my balancing game, a logic game, and a lot of business, I must say. I hope that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, I think you've been fantastically funny at that as well. We really appreciate the humor. If anyone is interested, I want to give a quick shout out to somebody who does do practice management and billing solutions for junior doctors and starting up their practices. So if you want to do a quick Google search, look for V Professional Services for medical billing and coding, and you can find them on the internet. And if anyone needs the details, they can ask, but I think there are options out there. So do your research, like Dr. Jane has said. Another question that has come up is somebody is asking, how much would you estimate you actually need to establish a practice? I think, like you alluded to, it does depend on where you are, what the expectations of your population are, and that. But would you be able to throw out like a rough ballpark?
A rough ballpark to comfortably do everything and to buy an ECG machine, which I think is important, and your basics, one bed, one step, all the other things, your secretary, your rent. I would say 200,000 to 250,000. It is quite a lot, but that's what it is. And your overheads a month, it depends on your rent. Rent is quite a big chunk of your expenditure, but I would say anything between 40 and 75,000 a month for your expenses. And then you might try and manage it.
Sure, those are big numbers.
Yeah, that's your salary at present.
So Jenna, thank you so much for your time. I know that you did intimate before that you were a bit pressed for time today. So thank you so much for giving of your Saturday. We really appreciate it. If there's no more questions from the floor, I think we'll release you to go and be the best doctor you can be and be funny with your patients. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Simon. I wished I had this, by the way. No one teaches you. This is valuable. So thank you for your guys' good work. Have a nice day. Bye.
Yeah, just to echo Dr. Jane's words, I think this is fantastic work that UDASA is doing. So to our seminar audience and to everyone online, please do remember that UDASA is there to serve you, the junior doctors of South Africa, that we have your interests at heart and we fight for you. And that's really, we are encouraging you to be members, and let's raise and elevate the voice of junior doctors in South Africa. We know that interns and ComServe doctors and junior MOs are very much the backbone of the public healthcare system. And without us, everything would crumble. So let's stand up and be counted and be part of SAMA and part of UDASA. Moving on to our next speaker, it's my privilege to introduce Dr. Saki du Plessis, and I'm going to just read his professional summary and a bit of his resume to begin with. Dr. Saki has over 30 years of experience in the healthcare industry and has a passion for training, research, development, and deployment of models and training programs for hospitals and doctors' private practices. Dr. Saki renders expert, customized professional services in marketing and business efficiencies to hospitals and private practices of healthcare professionals. In his career, he has guided more than 700 doctors from medical school to successful private practice. In terms of his experience, he's currently the doctor relations partner at Partner for Life, a medical practice management company. He's also group manager at Mediclinic Hospital Group and is responsible for the group's strategic growth strategy. He developed a referral management model for Mediclinic and its supporting doctors. He's the head of department of business management, lecturing in marketing, entrepreneurship, market research, and business management at the University of the Free State. He's published various accredited research articles in professional magazines, as well as delivered several papers at professional congresses and attended various conferences on hospital and physician relationships in the USA. The title of his PhD dissertation is The Marketing of Professional Services. It's an honor and a privilege to have Dr. Saki du Plessis with us on the webinar today. Good morning, sir. Can you hear us?
Good morning, Dr. Fraser. Now I can hear you. I hope you can hear me.
You can, loud and clear. So we are running a little bit over time. So we're going to give you the floor. Take it away and let us be amazed.
All right. Thank you. Okay, right. I hope you can see there. Let me just see there. Okay, so my approach, I must say thank you for the first speaker, Dr. Peters. When he explained there, it was clear that the future is not what it used to be. What was said by Glenn Santa, I think he definitely made that words true today. And then also thanks to Dr. Jana Eckstein, who actually explained what I want to do, which is a business model approach to start up your own practice. So I'm just going to look at the practice life cycle. She mentioned it took about, I can tell you, up to 3 years to have a well-established practice. And then the key, I think, is where to practice, where to start your private practice. So this is basically not to be employed. This is to start your own, say, GP practice there. And then this is the business model approach, the practice viability and growth potential. That's where it all starts. You need to have a viability, the practice need to be a long-term sustainable, and there need to be growth potential. Then HPO and Partner for Life Services. Now, who's HPO? HPO is a company that's doing doctor recruitment, placement, so they can look for practice opportunities for you. And Partner for Life is a bureau service that takes all this registration, systems, business management out of your life. So you can focus on your patients. So you outsource all your admin, your billing, coding, and collection, and they will do it on your behalf. So first of all, the practice doctor's life cycle. This is the cradle to grave. If you look at Dr. Jana Eckstein's logo, you see she's got there from pram to a walking stick. So this is typically, as Louis Buscaglia said, nobody will get out of this life alive. So this is the cradle to grave. So first of all, where you start is pre-practicing phase, where you are searching for what? You are searching for practice opportunities. So where can I find private practice opportunities? Determine the right address to practice. This is vital. What is the right address to practice? Where will I find the right address to practice? Then a whole HIPPO analysis. HIPPO means a comparison analysis of various practice opportunities. And you can even compare here. Maybe I can get employed by ER Consulting at Dr. Isaac mentioned there, or I can go to a hospital group like Mediclinic and become a clinical manager at the hospital. I can there's also at their head offices, these big groups also employ doctors. But this is now focusing on, no, I rather want to go for the practice for the private side. So it's all about the practice viability and growth analysis phase that you got to go through. You need to determine the market feasibility. Is there enough patients there? The financial feasibility, Dr. Jana mentioned there, you need about 200,000 to 250,000 to start up. Your overhead, your cash flow you need to run, overheads per month could be 40 to 75,000 Rand. So it's financially very important. operational feasibility. Operational is, must I do sessions? Must I do locum? Must I focus on my own practice? Operationally, maybe I must open up a urgent care facility, which means it's a walk-in facility where patients can walk in for urgent care. That's a new concept there. Then also the break-even. You got to work out how many patients must I actually see. So if you look at the SAMA report that was based on the cost of running a practice, they estimate there, not estimate, the research proved that a GP is seeing between 20 to 30 patients per day. So that's huge. A lot of patient volume, so you must make sure. So what is the break even? What turnover do you need? If you look at turnover, you can say now, let's say 25 patients per day times, say, 700 Rand a consultation, and that will give you your potential income. And once you've got your monthly potential income by 22 working days, you can deduct, say, 75,000 for operating costs, and that will give you your gross profit, which you can work on. So there is still money to be made out there in private practice. Then you also got to complete, and this is where I play a key role, is complete a practice business model. You need a business model. Then it's in the introductory phase where you actually start your new practice. It's all about the registrations. I think Jana covered all of these. I'm not going into these, but this is where a Partner for Life can assist you to do all this on your behalf. And even with the clearance of the medical aids that pays for the patient, we've got a solution called Account for Life, which is an account in the practice name, but it is administrated by us. So we can make sure that only the money that's been paid in by patients and the medical aid goes into that control account. That's something unique that Partner for Life does offer. Then we do the whole practice establishment. We go through a process with you. At this stage, Partner for Life is establishing about 30 practices per month. So that's all new practices. So doctors are really going to full now for private practice. There's huge opportunity, but the window of opportunity is now. You actually got to enter now. So Jana mentioned about you need a logo, you need a website, your e-patients, you need an announcement card. So this is Dr. So-and-so starting to practice at this address. This is his consulting hours, and even the medical aid you've got contracts with, you can put on the announcement card. And this announcement card is very important because if they're not aware of you, nobody is going to turn up at your practice. Your stationery is also important, digital stationery, which you require. Now it's the grow phase. Now, if you look at Jana's practice, after a year and 10 months, she's definitely now in the grow phase. She's established, she's introduced, she's well known there in the community there. So now it's a practice growth plan that you actually need. You can see we move away now from the area, the future. So here it's all about referral analysis. Where's my referrals coming from? Mapping, growth strategies. So your receptionist, from the very first day, the first call she received, she must ask the patient, where did you hear about this practice? Who actually informed you about this practice? And this is where the word of mouth also comes in. So it's all about growth strategies. Then it's a maturity phase. So now it is, you say, up to, say, 10 years already in practice. So now your maturity phase. This is where you're actually focusing on the retention plan. You don't even take on new patients. This practice is full. So it's all about quality, capacity that you've got. The patient base for a matured practice is more than 3,000 patients. So you need 3,000 patient folders to be say, but now I've arrived, I'm settled, and off I go. And then the one that we don't want to think about is the decline phase, the practice succession planning. So you always got to start your practice with the end in mind. So how is going to be my successor? Well, must I get in another partner? Am I going to retire? When? And did I plan well in advance? Right. So this is where should I practice? Important here, if you look at the medical insured population, because that's important. We are servicing patients with medical insured. You can see there, the average for South Africa is 15.5% of the population is medical insured. Western Cape, looks like the most affluent people staying there. Then it's followed by Gauteng 22, and then Northern Cape, Free State, Northwest, KZN, EC, MP, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo. So, but what's important here is not just the medical aid population, but also other private hospital facilities that is available. So important now is you haven't got the sole markets. You also now got another good stats here would be how many GPs is there per province to serve these medical insured patients. Right, so now, unfortunately for time, I'm going to talk fast, but there is these slides, some of them is available. You can just contact me and ask whatever info you want on this. So when you look at the factors considered to assess the future growth of a practice, the opportunity itself to do that evaluation, it's all about the medical insured population, as I said, the practice location. This is like property. It's all about location. You got to be at the medical hotspot, and you got to make sure that there is enough patient volumes. The average waiting time to get an appointment, that's important. So you can find out now, say you in Paul, like Dr. Jana there, you can find out how long does it take to get an appointment with a general practitioner. That will show you the need, how busy the existing market really is. And I can assure you that patients don't want to wait. If the following is a guideline, if a patient phones his or her GP before 10 o'clock in the morning, the expectation is to get an appointment that very same day. So that is the expectation. So find out, see how easy you can get an appointment, and not an emergent appointment, but a standard, say, a follow-up or checkup or appointment. Then the next one, very important, is your specific field of interest. What do you want the practice to be known for? Or is it an urgent care group practice opportunity where you only see green and yellow patients? That's another opportunity, as I said, that's coming in. But your specific field of interest here plays very important. And then also, we do advise always to rather go into a group practice where there's 2 or more GPs. So what is your partner's field of interest? Maybe he loves more to work with children. Then your receptionist will allocate those patients to him or her. So that is important, is to make sure that what do you want this practice to be known for and what is your field of interest. On the other side, then it's all the ability to achieve that potential. And here it's all about the practice staff, operational efficiency. A group practice I always recommend, because you share cost. You don't carry all that 40 to 75,000 rand, even the equipment, the 200 to 250. It's just easier way to start when it comes to risk management if you are in a part of a group. The 7 P's, if I had to go and consult any practice today, I will look at if the 7 P's is in place. The first one, P, is the product, the services you offer. What is your service catalog? What services do you offer as a general practitioner? The place where you are practicing, that's important. The address to practice, the price, the tariff. As Jana mentioned, you find out what the other GPs is charging in town. If you render a better service, you can charge more. If you differentiate, otherwise you got to match them. The problem here is if you look at price, you see the last 3 digits, the ICE. You got to take the ICE out of price, and the ICE is the co-payment, what I as a patient got to pay out of pocket. So that's why we recommend when you start to practice, charge medical aid rates. Later, once you start to get busier, you can hike your tariffs, but start with that. Promotion is all about digital these days. The younger generation, they go to your website, they look at references, so testimonials, that is very important on promotion side. Then people is your receptionist. She manage your time, got to be accessible, very important there, and make sure that she manage the practice there well, the front office. Physical evidence is the look and feel of the practice. the furniture, and then very important is the process. Keep the patient and the family informed. What's going to happen next? What is the treatment plan with me? The whole process. We're going to refer you to a specialist. You may be admitted to a hospital. Or this is the specific protocols I'm going to follow with this condition. So the 7P is very important, needs to be in place. Schedule of appointment. You are selling time. So time management is very important. So if you can't find a practice opportunity now, go and do a time management course, because that's what you're going to sell. So time is very important, and your receptionist is actually controlling your time. The platform for growth is you got to be systems driven these days. You can't do handwrite everything, scripts, all of these. So get technology in there. Your policies and procedures also need to be in place. From a billing point of view, from Partners for Life side, we must make sure that your receiving is, the money is coming in, your invoicing is going out, your claims, debtors days is good, you haven't got much bad debt, and then you need to generate cash flow. That's important to manage on that. Then also this opportunity will be determined by the doctors that's practicing in the feeder area. So this is your colleagues, how many other, and you can determine this through med pages and even from SAMA there. And then finally, as I said, it's all about financial patient volumes, as Dr. Jana Eksteen mentioned there. Right, this is a digital brochure that's available, so you can ask for it, and Partner for Life and HPO put this together. It's a guideline that gives you the 6 steps there when starting up a practice. Jana did mention all of them. What happens here is that Partner for Life will do this on your behalf. All you need is you just need to have your HPCA certificate where you are registered as an independent practitioner. Then we'll take your hand and we'll run with you. We'll help you to find the right address to practice. We'll help you with the whole establishment, this business model, Jana mentioned there about the electronic health record. We've got a system called Vertex that integrates 3 activities. It integrates your diary, your clinical notes, and your billing instruction. So that's all you need. Now it's a paperless practice, no more yellow folders. This is definitely the way to go. Partner for Life will then obviously come up with the practice management system. They own the software, so you don't need to buy software, nothing. They got a system that's integrated with other software, and they make sure that it is the easiest way to bill and collect and get your money in on your behalf. They do have 2 options. They've got their flagship, which is the only bureau service Partner for Life that offers that, where they guarantee your full turnover. That means whatever you build, they guarantee that money for you 30 days after month end. That means cash flow. That means no bad debt. So that is a very, very good option. The other one is like what all other bureaus charge or offer. That is called the PracPay, which is traditional. It is the fee is then on the net amount collected. You only get the money in that's been collected. So when you start, do charge medical aid rates and look for this Partner for Life option then. As I said, this will be available. Just make sure when you sign up with other bureaus is how to access, because you might be signed up for 3 years. Now you can't give notice. Partner for Life say 1 month notice. If you're not happy with us, you go. But it's called Partner for Life. Once you're a partner with Partner for Life, you'll stay there for life. Right. So what is the key focus areas? The key focus areas is the practice opportunity. Find the right address to practice. We can assist you with finding that right and do that evaluation on the right address. Then the whole practice establishment, that whole brochure of the 6 steps. So get professional support to do things first time right. If you register your Inc. name wrong, the BHF won't accept that. They've got specific prescription things that you got to adhere to when you register your name, and you got to make sure that that's in place. As I said, Partner for Life will do that for you. And then finally, the practice management solution, the option there, the Partner for Life or the PracPay. And there's the Vertex, the electronic health record, as I've mentioned. And this means that your practice runs like a business, so you can focus on your patient. So what is the script here at the bottom? The key when you start, get HPO Consulting and Partner for Life to help you to find the right address, set up your practice, and then Be a member of SAMA to back you up in private practice. That I can assure you is the way to go. So what's the difference here? Managers are doing things right. You are not a manager. Leaders are doing the right things. Maybe you are a leader, but you are a professional and you got to figure out what is right. And this is where we want to assist you, because if you need help, ask a professional. Thank you.
Amazing work, Dr. Du Plessis. Thank you so much for that session. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're
Okay.
good, Simon.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Du Plessis, thank you so much for your insights and for your sharing on this seminar. I see the rounds of applause coming in from our audience. Want to make reference to our audience. We have over 140 people online at present, as well as some people online on YouTube watching this webinar, which is being recorded for future reference as well. So if anyone that you know needs to hear this is missing it, please do tell them about the recording. But I think it's quite remarkable that we've got over 150 people out on a Saturday for a webinar. So thank you so much to everyone for participating. I think we're running a little bit over time. So Dr. Du Plessis, if I might be so bold as to ask you to please answer the questions that we do have in the Q&A chat by typing, if that's okay. I see there's an important question about the role of NHI in terms of possibly increasing the number of people who have insurance in the country. I know that NHI was a hot topic last year, not so much this year. I think it seems to have gone off the boil a little bit. But there is obviously an important factor there. And then maybe I'll post a question in the Q&A as well, but maybe you can also talk to us about the fact that there's 30 practices per month, whether that's because a lot of people are leaving the country, because you did say that there's a lot of opportunity, and whether those practices are actually in general practice or in specialist practice, because obviously people can register as a private practice. If I can ask you to type that into the Q&A chat, just because we're running 10 minutes over time and we do want to be respectful of everyone's time. But thank you so much for that session. I think it was brilliant.
Sorry, Dr. Fraser, I won't be able to answer all the Q&A questions, so you could just forward to me and then I will via email report back to them. I can just say on that 30 practices per month, the reason for that is that I think the doctors had lost confidence in the state as employer. So they rather want to do their own thing. And at Partner for Life, we've got hives. We've got a hive for GPs, we've got a hive for gynaes, a hive for orthopedics. So there's about 10 people that's just working on GP practices, and they know exactly this is the best to sign up with. And as far as NHIs, I can also supply a model there of the future role, the current model, and how the future will be. But for GPs, they're going to be in the pound sheet when it comes to NHI, because the state won't be able to handle all this. They got to outsource, and definitely primary care is going to be the discipline to be in the future. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We're going to introduce our next speaker briefly. That is Ms. Tebogo Sekwe. She is a private banker at Investec, and I know many of our junior doctors are very happy when they see that little zebra notification bar on their cell phone at the end of the month. Many of us do bank with Investec as individuals, but today she's going to be telling us what it's like from the professional practice side of things. As I mentioned, she's a private banker at Investec with 8 years of experience in the financial services industry, and she's been looking after doctors specifically for the past 2.5 years. She's a big believer in high fives and the glass always being full. Ms. Tebogo Sekwe, thank you so much. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Simon. I hope you guys can all hear me. So as Dr. Fraser mentioned, my name is Tebogo and I'm a private banker at Investec with 8 years in the finance sector and 2.5 years looking after medical professions. I think just to begin, I'd really like to thank you guys for giving me this platform to learn more about your profession and allowing me to provide learning around what we can do for you as a bank. I think, first of all, I'd like to just make mention to how stressful this period is for you guys. I know it's one that is marred with a lot of uncertainty around where your career will go and what you will do from here. So I hope that today, at least, I'm able to provide you with a little bit of comfort around what your options are and maybe even give you a little bit of confidence around starting your own practice. So I think the first thing as a banker that I'd always advise people to do when deciding what you're going to do post-ComServe is that you align yourself with 3 people. And these 3 people are a mentor, an accountant, and your banker. I really, really liked listening to Dr. Eckstein speak. And I think it's very important that you consider aligning yourself with someone like her, someone who's walked the path, someone who understands the pitfalls of what you're trying to do, and someone who's a direct line of sight and fully understands the journey. I think it's also very important that you also even consider locuming in a GP practice, because this will also give you a view on how a practice is run before you even start making that decision for yourself. The second person I mentioned is an accountant, and I think it's super important to speak to an accountant, because this will help determine income projections in the business that you're looking to take on, be it that you're buying into a practice or even starting your own business. And lastly, your banker. I think the bank is very important because credit is not a one size fits all. You know, it's really tailored to you as an individual and what your risk profile looks like. So very important to speak to your banker so you know what parameters to kind of operate in from a finance perspective. So when starting your journey, it's super important that you have created a savings buffer for yourself, as Dr. Eckstein mentioned. I would even push it to a good 400,000. I think her ballpark was quite conservative. I know it sounds a lot, but it also takes a lot to start a business and to even gain momentum in a business. So this will allow you to keep afloat from a personal perspective and not go into debt. You cannot borrow money to start a business when you don't even honor your present debts. So regardless of the path you choose post-ComServe, please, if you see that you're going to not, honor your debts in time, please have a conversation with your banker just so you can make a payment arrangement in time. Otherwise, it affects your credit rating going forward, even if it's not to, start a practice, even if it's just your present life. So from a finance perspective, once you've mastered the courage to start a business, you'll need to first invest using your own cash flow. I liked what Dr. Eckstein said, because a bank cannot believe in you if you have not believed in yourself. So if you have not funded your business or even invested in your business, a bank will not look at you at all. Because what banks like to do is they like to invest in businesses that are already up and running, business that we know that are profitable, because then the risk there is quite low in comparison to taking a chance on someone who's never done it before. Banks are always apprehensive to borrow money when you haven't shown that your business is profitable. So once you're able to borrow money, we're able to finance equipment, furniture, electronics, and even the structure that you'd be operating from. So what we primarily focus financing on is insurable assets. So you wouldn't finance things like medication, syringes. So this is where your savings would come in. So we don't finance consumables. When choosing the type of business to open, please, please, please avoid opening a sole prop. So sole proprietorships are basically a business that you take against your own name. So the tax is in your own name and you continue using the same tax number that you have now. So this would mean that you are liable against all debts in the business in your personal capacity. So what you're better off doing is opening an Inc., because the liability in an Inc. is shifted to the business. So this is where an accountant will come in. So they'll be best to consult in trying to understand what the best business model is for you, as they're able to advise based even on your future plans and what you're looking to do in that particular business. Guys, I think one last thing, I really was not planning to speak about this, but I think it's very, very important. So please, when you meet your soulmates, please, and you decide to take your relationship to the next level, please avoid getting married in community of property. Consider getting an ANC. And this has got nothing to do with, societal issues that people make mention. Oh, you think I'm a gold digger? No, I promise you, this is actually beneficial for you and your partner in the long term. Because if you decide on being an entrepreneur, there is a chance that your business might go under, and what your spouse would also then inherit all your debts and vice versa. So imagine you've opened a business and the business is not doing well. You and your partner both can't even bail yourselves out. So it's super important that at least one person is able to leverage and get debt to help you as a family. So please, guys, think about that when you decide to take that next step. I'm really open to also just taking any questions and answers at this time.
Amazing, Ms. Sekwe. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. I loved especially what you're talking about, registering as an incorporation rather than as a private individual. It's so important to protect yourself financially and protect your future. We do have exactly 2 minutes to answer questions before we need to move on to the next session. I think that was short but sweet. That was really, really beneficial. Maybe we can just quickly look to the Q&A if anyone has any questions they want to ask. I think, Tebogo, I'll ask one question. You might have alluded to it already. Are people able to come to Investec to get funding for setting up their practice? And is it the same as any business loan, or is there a specific model for private practices and healthcare professionals?
So I'll speak to that high level, right? We don't offer practice funding as a product. And I think that's like a general misconception in the public. So what we typically like to finance is parts of the business. So this is why it's super important that you have your own cash injection. So if you're coming to me and you're saying, listen, I'm trying to, I'm starting a practice, but what I'm short of cash, I'd like to maybe get a sauna or, equipment, we're able to finance those in part. But to give you funding for a whole, that proves to be a bit tricky because, like I said, that's also risk dependent. And most people that are coming from Conserve don't have, a strong credit record from that perspective, or they've already, collected so much debt that it's very difficult to lend more money to them. So a lot of them, and this guys is also just takes back to when you even start your career. Super important to try and limit the amount of debt that you take out. Taking out debt too quickly really does then prevent you from being able to lend more when there's actual use for the lending that you need to be doing at that point.
I think that answers the question perfectly. Stuck to the time as well, so thank you so much for that. Thank you to all of our panelists so far. I think that was an incredibly insightful session and very useful. I'm going to hand over to our next moderator, and that's Dr. Janke Mens, and she'll be taking us further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Mens. I am currently a Conserve in the Free State province, in Bloemfontein specifically. I'm also the Free State representative of JUDASA. We will be having a topic session about all leveling up. So the courses, diplomas, and exams that we all talk about and we all pay for and we all have to do to enhance your CVs to get these jobs that we need to apply for or open a practice and to be a safe doctor for the rest of your future. Our first speaker, unfortunately, cannot be here. It's Dr. Chloe Redelinghuis. She is currently in America partaking in a conference there, and it's currently her bedtime. So this is because of the time zone. We will be playing a video, and she's completely available for questioning afterwards. Dr. Chloe Redelinghuis, after graduating from Wits University in 2014, she completed an internship at the Pietermaritzburg Hospital Complex and then a community service at Ishawe Hospital in KZN. Since registering as an independent practitioner, she has alternated between working in the public and private sector in different capacities, from permanent to a locum MO work in pediatrics to GP work and even telemedicine at some point. During these years, she has managed to pass both the diploma in HIV management and the diploma in child health. Knowing firsthand how daunting it can be for young doctors to navigate their medical career and seeing the great need for mentorship and collaboration amongst doctors, she became the founder of SA Docs in 2021. SA Docs is an online platform where doctors go to find practical, relevant information and discuss various topics with doctors from across South Africa. This is Dr. Chloe Redelinghuis.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chloe. Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm really excited to be with all of you today. Thank you, JUDASA, for this privilege. It is a very big topic that I've been charged to discuss with you guys today, but it's also a very exciting topic. I'm really hoping to do it as much justice as I can in the next 10 minutes. So we're going to jump right in. I'm just going to briefly give an overview of what I'll be looking at today. Well, I'll be looking at how to level up in your professional career. So I'm not going to be speaking about CPD points. That is a separate topic, and I'm not going to delve into too much depth about each of the individual courses or examinations that you can do, but just help give a broad overview as a foundation for you to have understanding of how to find out what courses to do, where to find them, and how to go about doing them. So the first thing that I would recommend is consider the stage of career that you are in. I'm assuming that most of you guys are about to finish your community service, but there might be some here that haven't yet started community service or have already finished their community service. So I'm just going to briefly discuss the internship and the independent practice stage as well. After you've looked at the stage of your career, you also need to consider which stage are you going into. Do you need to prepare for that stage of your career? And also what field of interest you have. So obviously that would determine what you might be interested in studying or working towards. So just briefly, I'm not going to go into detail too much, but just to break it down into internship, community service, and independent practice, some of the helpful courses to consider during internship, if you're in internship, would be your short courses, because they are relevant to your time as an intern. You're really trying to grow your emergency management, your basic, the things that you need to be able to do, especially when you go into ComServe. And just as a doctor in general would be, for example, ACLS, APLS or PALS, your ATLS if you can get a spot, or your EMAT as an alternative. You can find on SA Docs Hub, we have a catalog of these courses that you can browse through and pick and do if you want. In ComServe, you also need to do the same courses. Your short courses always need to be up to date. A lot of jobs will require that you have completed certain short courses, so it is always better to have them under the belt. So always making sure that you've done the refresher courses. Don't let them expire. Keep up to date with them, is for your sake, for the patient's sake, and for your CD's sake. So in ComServe, if you haven't done them yet, make sure that you've done your short courses before you try and apply for some jobs outside of ComServe. Another thing that you might want to consider doing is in ComServe would be diplomas or fellowship examinations. That would be like your part 1, part 2s. Diplomas are typically clinically focused, whereas your fellowship examinations are more theory focused, kind of going into your anatomy, pathology. It's a little bit more your med school content, and it's quite specifically if you want to specialize in a certain direction. I will delve a little bit more into that a little bit later, but that's typically for ComServe. What I do want to mention while we're on the topic of ComServe is, if I know, for example, that I really want to get a job in surgery, which is a really competitive field, if I know I want to specialize, I know that's what I'm going to do. Not everyone gets the job or the post that they ideally wanted as they go out of ComServe. I think that we're all aware of that, even after the unemployment crisis of last year. So preparing yourself is not a terrible thing, even if it means doing work in another department to try and get into the department of your choice. Some common departments where you might end up, whether in public or private, would, for example, be emergency medicine, general practice, or even anesthetics. All three of these would be great areas for you, because anesthetics, you are dealing with critical care patients oftentimes. You can also do private work in that. Emergency medicine is always great, and even if I want to do surgery, for example, that's a great diploma to have done, the DIPIC. And they like, just be proactive in being aware that if you're too niche specific and you do a random diploma, trusting that you're going to be getting into a specific program, you might not get, or a specific job, you might not get that. So you don't need to worry too much about it if you end up in a facility or you end up in a job where you can't get strictly or directly into your post of choice. Try and prepare yourself, and even if you don't get it, continue preparing yourself for the job that you are looking for. And I'll delve into some ways to do that, which is helpful. And so we're going from ComServe into independent practice. So congratulations, you're finally officially your own person. Some of these courses, they would mostly be the same courses. You would want to keep on refreshing your short courses. You want to look at diplomas, especially if you know you want to head in a certain direction. Or if you find yourself settling into a career of choice, there are still diplomas that can help you grow your skill sets. And then you might want to consider doing swim fellowship examinations, typically your Part 1 examinations, if you are looking to specialize. So the question is always, which one do I do first? If I have 1 year and I only have capacity for one examination, say it's ComServe or first year of independent practice, what am I focusing on? I would recommend focusing on a diploma. In particular, because it adds a credential to your name. So it increases your scope of practice. It'll always be there, and it's a clinical examination. And so even if you can't get into a reg post, it allows you a greater chance to get into a medical officer post, or even a private sector post in private sector emergency care or anesthetics or whatever else. So just when it comes to stage of career and which one to do, how and when, I would recommend that. So just to delve a little bit into diplomas, and then I'm going to look a little bit at fellowship examinations, and then I'm going to look a little bit at some other courses that are available. Starting with diplomas, as I mentioned, they are more clinical and they're a credential to your name. They really are a massive add to your CV and to your confidence and your clinical management. I can't stress this enough, but they take some time. So you have different providers or institutions where you can do diplomas. The main one being the CMSA, the Colleges of Medicine of South Africa. And they typically have a slightly more strict application requirements. Or you have some diplomas offered by some universities. These examinations can be quite expensive, so you need to plan financially, and time-wise, you need to, for most of the CMSA examinations, you need to plan, I would say 4 to 6 months at least, depending on the diploma that you're planning on writing, and if you can really stick to a good study schedule. If you can give it 6 months, that'll obviously be better, rather not squash in everything and have the risk of failing. So the CMSA is the largest institution, but like I said, the application criteria can be quite strict, but they have the most common, your diploma in anesthetics, in internal medicine, in mental health, in all of these, pediatrics, all of these common ones that would typically help you get a public sector post, or a post that would enable you to specialize further in a reg program. So the first point of hunting would probably be the CMSA. Their criteria would often include having spent a certain amount of time, say 6 months, at an accredited facility in your relevant field. So if I did, for example, the diploma in child health, I had to do 6 months of pediatrics in an accredited facility that is listed on their website under the DCH examination regulations. So internship does count typically. So if you do, for example, we did 4 months of pediatrics, that was 4 months that did count towards that. And so also, if you're still in internship, try and get letters of recommendation for fields that you're interested in from the supervisors that you are under when you are there. Don't try and go back later. They might have completely forgotten about you because they have such a high turnover of interns. But so the 4 months would have counted, but I needed 2 months of pediatric time in an accredited facility. And so there's oftentimes this catch-22 of, I don't have what I need, but I can't get a job without the diploma. So how do I write the diploma if I don't have the requirements? So that's usually where people start looking at where they're applying for ComServe. So if you're still applying for ComServe, maybe your internship, whatever, start looking. We do add on the SADOC's website, we do add what facilities are accredited for what. But that's where you might want to consider it. Or you can do some other diplomas. There are some other diplomas or other ways, maybe logbook ways. It's all very relevant and specific to the examination, the diploma that you're looking at doing. So you need to go and find the diploma, the area that you're looking at, and go read about what they're offering. Otherwise, you can look at the universities and see what diplomas they offer for that relevant field. It is less, they offer less diplomas than the CMSA, but there are still some ways. So for example, UCT offers a diploma in child health that you can do over 2 years, and you don't need to be in an accredited facility. You can do it via correspondence while still working in a more rural pediatric facility, for example. But if you're confused, the whole point of SADOC's hub was to create a space where doctors can actually ask questions, answer questions, and where those who have gone before can help those who are coming after. So feel free to go ask your questions. Some other diplomas that you might want to consider, except for those main ones, might be a diploma in family medicine. You can often do that one while working as a GP. So if you don't find yourself in a post, you're stuck in that catch-22, you can still do some diplomas like the diploma in general practice, diploma in family medicine, diploma in tropical medicine, diploma in occupational health. There are still other ones that you can do, and we do have some links and information on the SA Docs website. The important thing is leave enough time, go hunting, and be proactive in this. So I'm running out of time, but I just quickly want to touch on fellowship examinations. You would have heard part 1, part 2. These are more theory-based. They're great to do if you know you want to specialize. So if you have the post that you want and you're trying to get into a REG program, you need to look at writing your part 1s. These are offered by the CMSA. I would recommend collaborating with fellow colleagues that are also looking at specializing or also looking at writing these exams. Make sure you give yourself enough time. It is very intensive. So some people would say 6 months is a bare minimum for you to prepare for a part 1 examination. And part 2 exams are typically done during REG programs, except if you have enough time, then you might as well do part 2 as well. And then some other courses that you might want to do if you're not looking at diplomas. I mean, there are so many out there. Besides the CPD courses, you can do ultrasound courses. You can do courses in aesthetics, in HIV management, pain management, palliative care, medical impairment evaluations. You've got so you can do SASA grants. You've got non-clinical courses like your GCP or good clinical practice, which is if you want to go into research, then you need that. You can do practice management courses, billing, all these things. There really is a plethora of courses available. Make sure that you save up. Include in your budget, always include furthering your education or leveling up. It is working towards your own future and the health of your patients. And some platforms are listed on the SA Docs website as well. As I mentioned, universities already. There's also Knowledge Hub, Foundation for Professional Development, a couple of random providers. And for your short courses, there's a number of short course providers. So my time is unfortunately up. I really try to squeeze in as much as possible in a little bit over 10 minutes. I really hope this was helpful, just for where you're at right now, considering your future stage, and then looking at what you're able to do, what you need to do, and if you're not able to do what you need to do, how can you do something else in the meantime to improve your chances of getting where you want to. For more information, go check out SA Docs Hub. To celebrate just also you guys finishing ComServe and everything, we've actually decided to open up a promotion on SA Docs Hub. It is a membership-based platform because the software is unfortunately expensive, but we have created a promotion, a discount. So if you sign up before the end of this month using the promo code level up, capital letters, level up 6, then you get the first 6 months free. So go check it out. Remember to submit your verification documents so we can make sure that you are a doctor and that you are the one who is applying, because we really try and create a safe space for doctors to communicate. Thank you so much. This was hopefully helpful for everyone, and I hope that I've encouraged everyone here not to lose hope, but just keep pushing through and just keep improving, just keep growing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for Dr. Chloe for making that video at about 2 a.m. in the morning in America. I see there's no questions currently, but just remember that level up 6 to get a promotion code for SA Docs. I myself have personally used SA Docs before to apply for the 37 MO posts that I am hoping to get one of them. So it's definitely such a user-friendly platform. And if you need any information on how to level up and how to improve your CV to get that job one day, SA Docs, I will definitely recommend that you check it out. Our next speaker is actually from Claassen and Claassen. I'm sure some of us have done courses through them. I have Dr. Karen Claassen on here available for questions afterwards. We are going to play a video as well, as they are busy with their courses currently in Port Elizabeth. So I would just want to introduce them. So Claassen and Claassen is accredited with the Resuscitation Council of South Africa and the American Heart Association, and they present the following medical courses: the BLS and the BLS instructor course, the ACLS course, ACLS EP course, the PALS pediatric course. CCT is also accredited with the American College of Emergency Physicians, thus they can present the ITLS trauma course. They have developed an aviation for healthcare providers course, as well as an ECG interpretation course, and a new edition that will be available in 2025 will include the management of an emergency airway. All these courses are CPD accredited. Dr. Karen and Johan Claassen, with their 66 years combined expertise and experience in the medical field, especially the pre-hospital field and emergency room, serve as a backbone of courses presented at Claassen and Claassen training. CCT has been actively training these courses for more than 20 years. Claassen and Claassen training received the following RCSA Gala Dinner Awards: the Top Organization Award for the training center that is recognized for his hard work and dedication to the Resuscitation Council of South Africa. Dr. Karen herself received the Key Contributor Award for the Advanced Life Support Training Center Coordinator, who embodies the management of instructors and goes out of their way to ensure that the TC standards are upheld. Dr. Johan received an international award as ITLS Training Center Coordinator of the Year due to his dedication to the trauma care and training. Here is Dr. Claassen and Claassen training with their information on leveling up in your career.
Thanks a lot, Janke. Can you guys hear and see me?
Yes, all good.
Janke, great. Thanks, Ron. We can play the video because I think that's maybe a good start. Let's do an intro video to show what we're doing, and then I'm open for any questions.
Claassen and Claassen training is accredited with the Resuscitation Council of Southern Africa and the American Heart Association, the HA, to present the following emergency medicine courses: BLS and BLS instructors, ACLS, it's a cardiac course, ACLS EP, and PALS, which is a pediatric emergency course. CCT, Claassen and Claassen, is also accredited with the American College of Emergency Physicians to present the ITLS trauma course. We have developed an aviation for healthcare providers course, as well as an ECG interpretation course, and a new edition in 2025 will include the management of the emergency airway. All of these courses are CPD accredited. Dr. Karen and Johan Claassen, with their 66 years combined expertise and experience in the medical field, especially the pre-hospital field and emergency room, serve as the backbone of the courses we present at Claassen and Claassen training. CCT has been actively training these courses for the last 20 years. Claassen and Claassen training received the following Resuscitation Council Gala Dinner Awards: Top Organization Award for the training center that is recognized for its hard work and dedication to the Resuscitation Council. Dr. Karen received the Key Contributor Award for the Advanced Life Support Training Center Coordinator, who embodies the management of instructors and goes out of their way to ensure their training center standards are upheld. Johan received an international award as an ITLS Training Center Coordinator of the Year due to his dedication to trauma care and training.
Okay, colleagues, I think that summarizes very well what we are doing. Something that I want to highlight that the video didn't show specifically is we are based in Pretoria, Linwood Reach. We stay at our training center. We've got a guest house at our training center, which means you're welcome to, it's a one-stop service, stay and get trained. We get lots of people coming from all over the country, but even international people who comes to train with us. In the same breath, I also want to say we do travel. So as we speak, we are in Port Elizabeth training a group of doctors here in ACLS. So we train everywhere within South Africa's borders, as long as you've got enough people. So we normally work on a ratio of 8 students for every one instructor. So we normally say if you get a group of 8 people together or even 16, we do double courses as well. We travel everywhere where there's an appropriate facility, a proper venue. We look at your venue first before we give you a quote. And then something I always say is keep in mind, don't feel you've got to always pay for yourself. Sometimes the facility you work for is actually prepared in government. Often the government is prepared to pay for a group. Or maybe you go and work in private, let's say Mediclinic. We often have people from Mediclinic, or we go to Mediclinic sites and we go and train there, and life as well, even Netcare. So everywhere in the private sector and government, I find often your employer is prepared to pay for you, or you get a group of people together, and we are more than prepared to travel and come and present courses wherever the need is. So, Ruan or Janke, if there's any specific questions, anything anybody wants to know from us, free to ask.
Thank you so much, Doctor. No, I have not seen any questions specifically. I think the video and everything has answered it very, very well. And from experience itself, I've done a few courses through you guys as well, and always such a great experience. And I use those skills every single day in my primary healthcare facility where I'm working currently. So thank you so much for all the work that you do in enhancing doctors and just the medical aid that we can provide to patients. Thank you so much. Our next topic is we're calling it A Brave New World, and it's exploring non-clinical pathways for after ComServe. I'm handing over to Dr. Shade Breert, who's going to introduce the topic.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our 5th and final session, A Brave New World, exploring non-clinical paths, unveiling non-traditional career options outside of clinical medicine. My name is Shade Breert. I'm the current Vice Chairperson of JUDASA, and I serve as a Community Service Officer at Helderberg Hospital in the Western Cape. It is my privilege to introduce 3 incredible speakers to you this morning. Without further ado, the first speaker is Dr. Rob Kisser. He will be speaking to us about the combination of medicine and data science at the bioinformatics company. Rob Kisser is a medical doctor by training, with experience spanning clinical research, both state and private healthcare. A graduate at the University of Pretoria, Robert furthered his education by completing a postgraduate diploma in public health and specialized project management training through WITS. After practicing clinical medicine in tertiary and rural settings, he commenced his research career at WITS Reproductive Health and HIV Institute. Here he served as an investigator, driving clinical trials aligned with positively impacting maternal and child health. Robert is intentional about fostering collaborative environments. In a world of complexity, he advocates that the best solution is the simplest one, which works. Welcome, Dr. Rob Kisser.
Right, just checking that my audio and video are working. Someone could just confirm for me. Awesome. Thanks. So I've dispensed with slides more just because the nature of my talk is very much what I've been through and have experienced, and a few anecdotes and so on. So I thought slides wouldn't necessarily lend themselves to that. So I'm going to be talking and you'll be seeing me for the duration of the chat. Just like to acknowledge Sana and JUDASA for setting this up. I think it's an amazing idea. I'm going to echo what the others have said when they've mentioned this would have been super helpful when we finished off ComServe, because you've had a very I would say narrow view on the world and narrow view on what constitutes sort of the working world outside of clinical medicine. So something like this, you can see a few more dimensions of it. My talk today, just to give you sort of a brief idea of what's coming up, is just going to be a bit of taking stock of where you're at right now. And I think Dr. Peter did a phenomenal job just sort of laying out what things look like right now in the medical field and in the job market specifically, because the job market is pretty rough right now. I'm then going to be giving you an overview of my route, where I did ComServe, and the few steps after ComServe that led me to where I am now. And I certainly don't think that this will be the final step, because the nature of careers these days is that you don't stay in one place, for 10 years anymore. The moves are more rapid just because of how quickly the world is changing and how quickly things are advancing. Then have some QA lined up. I saw with some of the sessions, the questions come along a bit slowly, and like through LinkedIn and Instagram, I get so many questions that I never get around to answering because you're pretty tired at the end of a workday, that I've lined them up and will answer them. And then, of course, if you have anything additional after that you want to pop in the Q&A, by all means, go for it. So yeah, to start off, I just wanted to rehash a bit of what Dr. Peters has said, that the job market is incredibly competitive right now. And it used to be a scenario where an MBCHB would give you a degree of job security, and simply because of oversaturation on the supply side now, you're finding that there's just way more competition for clinical posts and I guess clinical adjacent posts. So I guess there's more and more focus now on, if I can't get into a hospital, a state post, or even a private ED post, because even those are becoming a bit full, especially in, I would say, lifestyle provinces like Cape Town, where there's a lot of immigration contributing to the oversupply of doctors there as well. People do start asking, what else is out there? What can I do with an MBCHB? So I will sort of get to that with my flavor. I mean, it may not be a comprehensive overview, but it will be something for you to chew on. I do think it's getting progressively tougher. I mean, I don't want to be a wet blanket on this talk. I'm certainly going to say that there is opportunity, but it is getting progressively tougher. And I think you need to prepare yourself already in internship maybe for the rigors of job seeking after ComServe, because it just isn't as easy as you think it is. So hats off to all of you. It's a period of a lot of uncertainty. Number one, in finding out what you're keen on doing, because I mean, there's that whole dimension of what do I want to invest my money and resources into doing for the next 2, 3, 4 years. That's usually how far I think ahead, at least. But then the other dimension is what's available, because what I might want to do and what I'm keen on, there might just be no options to do that. And then you kind of have to get creative as well. And then also just, this is perhaps a bit of an aside, but that feeling of uncertainty, and I love that Dr. Shrikant also spoke about liminality. I know that's quite a word. I just call it feeling unsettled. You deal with feeling unsettled as a doctor in general because you're made to, number one, shift from your med school to a new place in internship. So that's already a major life shift and a major environmental move. Then after internship, you're already made to shift to a new place for ComServe, most likely. I mean, if you're lucky, you manage to stay in the same place or move to within the same city. So you do also deal with feeling unsettled and this constant change in your life for quite a while. And that doesn't go away soon. It stays with you for a while. So, I mean, bear in mind that also is a thing. Okay, so I did ComServe in terms of my route in the rural Free State, a small district hospital called Mbekweni. Quite small, limited resources. I think a lot of you are familiar with that. And very much ComServe run hospital, which has its pros and cons. After ComServe, and a lot of the dialogue that I have around this will be me and my wife. So when I say we, it's just I'll be talking about my wife as well. We knew that neither of us wanted to specialize. It just wasn't something that I think we were invested in within the context of what it would take to specialize. Because specializing is no longer just, you apply in a department, you get the MO post, and then you can feel out what the department is like, you don't have that trial period anymore. There's nothing like that. You have to commit to doing your primaries, get all of your accreditations lined up, and then apply and hope that you get a post. And then also it's just a massive commitment. I mean, 4 years of your life. And I regard specializing as 4 years of full-time work plus 4 years of full-time study. So it's massive. And I think realizing that and chatting to all the people we did when we were at that stage, we opted not to go that route. But it's amazing that people are committed enough to do that and can shoulder that responsibility, because we need specialists, obviously. So after ComServe, we took time off, which was something I heard mentioned by the previous speakers as well. We took about 3 months off just to decompress after the 3 years of community service. And yeah, decide a bit about where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do. Obviously, that's a luxury. I mean, if you don't have the financial resources available to sort of break for that time, you'll have to jump straight into a post. So, I mean, I say that with that in mind. And then after that 3 months, we then still weren't entirely certain where we wanted to go. So I applied at a locum agency, and there are quite a few good locum agencies around. And at that stage, we didn't have too much difficulty finding one, signing up at one, and getting started there. That then serves as sort of your cash flow in the interim while you further develop what you'd like to do. If you aren't someone that has already mapped out the full plan, like your MO post, reg post, and then becoming a consultant. Locum posts are becoming slightly more competitive, as the gentleman from the doctor from ER Docs also mentioned. There's a lot of applications for posts, and competition is high, but it's a good option if you just want to sort of keep the bills ticking over while you try and figure out what you want to do. I locumed in emergency departments as well as in GP practices. Enjoyed the GP practice space immensely. Ended up signing as a partner in a GP practice. Great time in terms of the people and the setup. Bad time in terms of macroeconomic factors, because it was COVID time. And as many of you know, building a practice in COVID, not a great thing to do. Very tough. GP visits and going out in general, exposing yourself was like frowned upon, which rightly so was maybe not the best thing to do. So it was a challenging environment to build a practice during. And after, you set a certain amount of time that you're willing to push the career path, the career opportunity. And then you have to set a limit and say, look, I'm taking stock now. I need to see whether this is going to work for me or not. And based on the rate of growth after, I think it was about a year, slightly more than a year that I've been working as a partner in the practice, it was still immensely difficult, because I mean, we were a dual income household, but when you start a GP practice, and I think it is Dr. Eckstein that had a candid chat with us about this, you make very little money in the beginning because you're building your patient base. People need to learn to trust you. So if it's a very busy practice and you've got overflow coming in from other doctors, great, because then they just feed you the extra patients. But if it was quiet, like during COVID, you're not earning a lot. So I was almost entirely dependent on my wife's income during that stage. She was doing locum in ED. And this just speaks to what a lot of other speakers have mentioned already. And this is what's tough about being at the end of a talk like this, that most of the topics have been explored already. But I mean, what a testimony to how good the speakers have been, right? You need financial agility if you're going to make changes in your career, and if you want to shift career lanes, you need agility. So that means not having a huge burden of debt around your neck. Fortunately, at that stage, we didn't yet have a bond on a house. We were still driving our old cars, and I mean, when I say old, they're really old. So there was a bit of maneuvering possible there, because the debit orders weren't huge and you could take a drop in income. Long story short, GP practice chapter ended. I moved over to Wits RHI because with COVID and the advent of improved vaccine manufacturing and just the emphasis on public health and the role of an effective united response against something like a pandemic. It was something that really appealed to me, research. Then jumped into research at Wits RHI. I say jump, I think I was fortunate at that stage that it wasn't yet a popular option because I was not, I would say, the most experienced candidate, but what people often hire for is team fit as well. So, I mean, whenever you do interview at a department, whatever the case may be, team fit is a big component as well. So remember how you would fit in with the people and the personalities there is a big deal as well. I was in research for over 2 years, which was amazing. And then an opportunity popped up, which is where I am right now at this point in time. And this is sort of the power of connections as well. A friend of mine, colleague, said to me, look, there's this new startup, which is doing data management, clinical data management. Thanks, Rowan. 3 minutes left. Okay, I need to speed up because there's a crazy amount of Q&A. So yeah, then I simply messaged the CEO of the startup on LinkedIn. It was that simple. Popped them a message. I said, look, I'm Robert, I'm a doctor. I would love to join your company if you see utility for me in a role there. And that then translated into 2 rounds of interviews, and then started working as someone at a clinical data manager. And I started as a clinical data manager, but then moved to QA, which is quality assurance. So I think what's important here as well is you need to be willing to perhaps not do the exact thing that you've intended to do, because there may not always be a need for you to do what you want to do. So while I did start as a data manager, as the company grew, we realized we needed someone as QA. And as doctors, and I don't think as a doctor or as doctors in general, you give yourselves enough credit, you have a huge amount of corporate skills that you just haven't translated into corporate language. Because you're just not exposed to that environment. I mean, working in a clinic or an ED, you're managing resources, you're managing people, you're interacting with people, you're prioritizing, you're performing QA checks, even though you don't know you're performing QA checks. M&Ms are review procedures. So all of the things that you do in the clinical setting, to some extent can benefit you if you're just creative enough about how you apply them to the corporate context or to a more business-related role. And these things have sort of served me in good stead in now sort of moving over to corporate. I mean, it's not like you just get in there and you start working and it's an easy time, but you can if you believe in yourself. And I think the big thing is you need to be willing to step out of that very tightly held comfort zone, which all of us have. I mean, at some stage, an idea of working outside of clinical medicine was ridiculous. I mean, that's what you know and that's what you're good at. But if you embrace that idea, there's actually so much that you can do. There's a lot of value that you can contribute to businesses. So that's where I am right now. I am going to try and get to the Q&A, but maybe let me leave that for the end and finish off sort of with my closing thoughts. And then Ruan, I don't know if Shade is online. I saw her intro was recorded, so I assume she's offline. And then Ruan, if there's time left, we can do some Q&A. And if there isn't, then I'll just answer the questions at a later stage. So then in terms of general thoughts and closing thoughts around this, I mean, I know I haven't had the time necessary to give you an exhaustive list of non-clinical career options, and I'll pop a post of that in the chat afterwards. When you think about your career and you perhaps don't want to go like a traditional route anymore, you need to think about the fact, or be cognizant of the fact that career paths these days are non-linear. The business world likes generalists slightly more, I would say, than specialists. That's my personal opinion. So when I say a generalist, it's a person that can do a number of things reasonably well, as opposed to someone that can do one thing exceptionally well. So you need to have that mindset if you're looking at non-clinical jobs, is that, how can I capacitate myself to add value to wherever I want to go right now? And an interesting thing that I was reading about the other day is the rise of T-shaped professionals, like literally the letter T, because you've got that breadth of being a generalist and being able to do a number of things reasonably well, but you still have your specialist knowledge, which is the bottom stroke of the T. So that would be me, for example. I've got clinical research knowledge, which is my special knowledge, but then throughout all the other things that I've done in medicine and working with people and, you know, just all the cumulative experience you've garnered over med school and what you've done, you have that top line of the T, which is your more generalist experience. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, this notion of what can I do with an MBCHB, and is there any value in doing an MBCHB? And I think you mustn't get stuck on whether it's an MBCHB or not. MBCHB isn't the question. It's what can I add to the company or business that I'm applying to with the skill set that I have. And then you add on the fact that you have an MBCHB. I think we tend to be too self-limiting in thinking just, I've got a medical degree and I can't do anything. And that really closes off a lot of potential opportunities for you if you just say, oh, well, I haven't done anything else. You can do courses, you can do additional qualifications. And I mean, I know I haven't spoken much to that, but Chloe did actually talk a bit about that, and there's a long list as well, which I think would be a good resource. But yeah, I think it's sort of stepping out of that one career track mind, one path mindset, and really thinking about what value can I offer, and you can offer a lot of value. Ruan, just tell me, how are we looking for time? I don't know if I should start on the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. I think what we'll do, because today is not online, so we do have videos by her. But what we'll do is I'll quickly, because we still have Dr. Matthew and Dr. Zianda to speak. So I think we'll just continue with today's videos, let them speak on their parts. If you can, while they're speaking, I see there's one question so far, maybe you can type there, but otherwise, after the two of them have spoken, Janke will lead a short Q&A question on this whole session as a whole, and then we'll take it from there.
Perfect, thanks.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rob Kiso, for that informative and inspirational presentation. Our second last speaker of this conference is Dr. Chris Matthews. Chris currently serves as the Health Informatics Officer for the private hospital group Netcare. In this role, he also serves as the clinical lead for Africa's largest EMR system, through which Netcare has established the first fully digitalized hospital in South Africa. Prior to joining Netcare, Chris trained as a medical doctor and then went on to complete an MBA as a Lewis Dreyfus Weidenfeld Hoffman SAID Scholar, followed by a Master's International Health and Tropical Medicine as an Exxon Mobil Global Health Scholar, both at the University of Oxford. He is passionate about healthcare and technology, the ever-expanding intersection of the two, and the role this will have on improving healthcare for all South Africans. Welcome, Dr. Chris Matthews.
Okay. Hi. I'm not sure if I should ask Ruan or Simon, just because you guys can hear me loud and clear. It looks like my audio is working.
All good.
Perfect. Great. Cool. Thanks, everybody, and thank you for having me and inviting me for the session. I didn't actually realize the intro was going to happen, so that takes out a bit of my chunk of my start and off segment. But as Shade mentioned, my name is Chris Matthew, a doctor by training, left clinical medicine now, going on 8 years ago, and have been with Netcare for the last 6 of those years as the Health Informatics Officer. I did not leave clinical medicine ever with the intention of joining Netcare or working in the private sector. It's just how things worked out. And I left clinical medicine having done my internship at Barrow, my ComServe at the Gen, and eventually realizing that I wanted to have an impact in healthcare that was broader than the patient that was in front of me at the time. It wasn't a journey that I planned to take so quickly. Sorry, 2 seconds, it's just my son. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so it wasn't a decision I planned to take so early. I, like many of us, knew of the conveyor belt of healthcare. You go through internship, go through community service, do your primaries, do your diplomas, eventually try and get a reg post, and then you go into the system, specialize, and that's the path that we all know so well. I planned to follow the same path and then eventually leave clinical medicine once I had the security and safety net of a speciality under my belt. And the opportunity to leave sooner than that and do an MBA came up, and I was very fortunate to have a scholarship to do it, but it completely shifted my plans. But even taking that first leap, there was an important motivator and a light that guided me on that journey. And that was, when I look back now, I think of very naively, was to become CEO of Barra. I'm not sure they still say it, I'm sure they do, but they used to always say Barra doesn't change you. So you don't change Barra, Barra changes you. And my dream, as naive as it might have been at that time, was to be the one to change Barra. And I don't know if I ever will, and maybe one day I'll have the opportunity again. I think my path's taking me on a very different route, but it made me realize that my role to play in the system was far bigger than what I wanted to do in that individual environment on a one-on-one basis with each patient, and I had the opportunity to do that. But that motivation to leave Barra, to change Barra, to effectively become CEO of Barra is what pulled me out of clinical medicine and then made me look at other opportunities. I did a bit of non-clinical work before I started studying, did a bit of consulting work for health informatics, NGO. I started to get exposed to the other sides of healthcare. There's so much out there that we don't know. And if you don't know what you don't know, you don't even know where to begin looking. And what was really critical in that point of my life and my career was just networking, just reaching out to people, and their graciousness in that process to spare their time and their own capacity and their weekends and afternoons to have coffee with me is what really opened up my eyes to what's out there. Until very, very recently, every single job I've ever gotten has been through a coffee chat. I've never done an interview. I haven't even applied for a job. I just have coffee with somebody and it ends up converting into a job. And it just shows the power of network. And there's so much that you can gain just by talking to people, reaching out. Yeah, cold calling is difficult. I get a lot of cold calls. I'm going to say cold calls in air quotes on LinkedIn. It's difficult to always respond to it, but I try my absolute best. And I generally allocate my Fridays as it's my paying it forward to people to allocate time and do coffee chats to share my own advice. But you can't chat to everybody. So these types of sessions or podcasts like I've done with Simon in the past, that's my way of reaching more people, but just to try and share my experience. There isn't a one size fits all. For me, the most important part and the piece of advice I share with everybody is you need to spend time, just slow down, take a step back and reflect on what you want to do. What does success look like for you? I think Rob, just a little while ago, you mentioned about being a generalist and you want to try and play to all your opportunities and all your skills and your strengths, but you also have to be very clear on what you're looking for. For me, my view has always been do what you love and don't sort of do it for the money or just do it for the job. And obviously that's a bit of a luxury to say, but the passion and the dream and the vision that you have should drive you to where you want to go to next, and the rest will come later. The success and the career, or let me say the remuneration or financial aspects will come later. I've had people who one guy recently said to me, so I asked him, what does success look like? And his idea of success was when he makes 25 million rand. And I was like, that's a very specific number to quote, very large number. But it's something that doesn't really drive you to a real goal. There's lots of ways to make 25 million rand. You don't have to be a doctor to do that. You could find a whole bunch of different ways. And trying to identify that purpose is not easy. It's very challenging. I like to once a quarter I'll take a day off where it's just, I'm not saying meditation, it's just I'll book like a spa day or just a day for myself, and I'll just try to reflect, just to take that step back and really assess where I am in my career, where I am at work personally, and to reflect. And so often life is so busy and so hectic, we don't have the time for that. But for each of you, as you reach this critical turning point in your career, these crossroads, spending that time is invaluable. Just trying to reflect on what that future looks like and what you want to achieve. It's not to say that the goal you set of, let's say, become CEO Barra is the be all and end all. And if you don't become CEO Barra, then you failed. Not at all. But it's just to give you something to guide you and to start you on that journey. And the analogy I always use with a coach of mine that gave it to me previously was just identifying that mountaintop that you want to climb and having your eyes very clearly set on it. And the path you take to get there might be through the valley, across the mountain ridge, through the desert, through the swamp. But ultimately, all of those paths will eventually lead you to that mountaintop, and being very clear on what that mountaintop looks like. So once you get there, you know you succeeded. But the path you took to get there is almost irrelevant. It might be maybe one might cost you more in terms of time or resources, but you might learn more, or vice versa. There will always be pros and cons to each. But ultimately, if you're achieving your goal, that's what matters. But that only comes with having spent the time to identify that goal very clearly. So that's always my piece of advice. Whether you want to study, I have a lot of people reach out to me to ask about doing an MBA or doing another course. Should they go work in private, work in a startup, go try and apply for big corporates? Yet again, no, there's no one size fits all. There's things that will work for you in different ways. I decided very intentionally on MBA because I picked up and identified the gaps I wanted to fill. And an MBA was an easy way for me to address those gaps. But we, at the moment, I often feel like we have a saturation of doctors with MBAs, and specifically doctors that have an MBA, but not really clear on what they want to do with the MBA. Not to say the MBA doesn't add value, like I said, but just being clear on why it adds value and why you want to do it. So that's my main piece of advice, really. And then, look, I did see one of the Q&A questions, so I'll mention it and allude to it briefly. Trying to find that opportunity is also important, is whether it's a startup, whether it's a consulting firm, a big corporate, there are lots of different opportunities. It comes back to what is your vision, what you're trying to achieve. In my role, or in my journey rather, I've worked for an NGO. I worked for a startup in London in the healthcare space, in the health, let's say, social care and health tech space. And now in my role at Netcare, I've been very, I'm technically actually in IT, if you believe that. My son calls me an IT doctor, computer doctor, because it's been a long time since I saw a patient. But that is the joys of my role now, is that I've completely shifted our clinical work into a realm that I would never imagined before. And it is incredibly exciting. I can very proudly, and I try and say it modestly, is there is nobody else in the country like me and doing what I'm doing at the moment. So I've been so fortunate with opportunities I've had at Netcare. Having 45 hospitals around the country that are fully digitized. Myself, I've been blessed with a team that supported me on the journey to have a hospital digitized. That kind of exposure I would have never planned or anticipated. And there's no better place than Netcare at the moment to be in the health tech space for the work that we're doing. And we're doing a lot of work around LLMs, generative AI, and big data, because that's sort of what comes next after you set the foundation of an EMR. So it's incredibly exciting. So if somebody's interested in that, feel free to reach out. But even if there's anything else, broadly speaking, it's just the idea of whatever the space might be in healthcare or otherwise, to how you get there. There's a bit of a recipe, but it isn't always a one size fits all. Okay. And I think I've got, just over 10 or 12 minutes. So I'll maybe pause there. I think we'll do questions at the end, Rowan, if I heard you correctly. But thank you. Like I said, you're welcome to reach out to me. My LinkedIn is an easy way. So Chris G. Matthew, like my name is in the chat or on the Zoom. You can find me there. Otherwise, my email address as well is me@chrisgmatthew.com. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chris Matthews. You're an inspiration to us, and we can all learn from your vast experience. Thank you again for being here today. And now, it is my privilege to introduce the final speaker of today's conference, our very own Dr. Ziyanda Mugugudo Selo. She serves as the head of unit professional services at the South African Medical Association, which is the parent association of JIDASA. She is a public health medicine specialist known for her extensive expertise and contributions to healthcare. Beginning her journey at the University of Cape Town, she earned her undergraduate degree in medicine, followed by a postgraduate master's degree in public health medicine and fellowship with the College of Public Health Medicine. Her career has traversed both public and private healthcare sectors in South Africa. Dr. Mnguguddo Selo's influence transcends national boundaries, as she played a pivotal role in shaping healthcare standards and quality assurance in Southern and East African countries. Her career trajectory reflects her unwavering dedication to enhance healthcare systems, advocating for patient-centric care and championing excellence in the field of public health and medicine. Welcome, Dr. Siyanda.
Thank you very much, Sade. Thank you, Judasa. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to give a short presentation so that as I share my story, at least you can have an idea. There's so much to share, so little time. So I just want to make sure that I cover as much as I can in this presentation. So as has been said, I am the head of unit for professional services at the South African Medical Association. Often people ask me, what is that? So I am the doctor responsible for all the doctor issues within SAMA. So all the various committees sit under my unit. And the reason why I took the job is because I really sensed it was time for me to be active in the advocacy space. And I wanted to particularly advocate for doctor issues in the health system. So how did I get there? Making the decision to leave clinical medicine. So after my ComServe, I was at a hospital in Mpumalanga, Tintswalo. I then went to do my post-ComServe at Temba Hospital, and I was in the emergency unit. So I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to do emergency medicine. I'm passionate about it. I know for sure that I don't want to be in the ward because just following up patients is not going to work for me. So I wanted to see a patient and allow the patient to move on to the next doctor. But soon I started asking myself, do I really want to see patients or do I not want to see patients? And this frustration stemmed from the fact that as much as I was working so hard to see my patients, the things that were failing me or making me not achieve what I thought, was giving patients quality healthcare was due to systematic failure. So for example, I remember being in the hospital and I've clocked a patient, I've written the management for the patient, but then they go to the pharmacy and there is no antihypertensives or there is no Panado, simple things like that. And I just could not understand, I just sensed that it's a waste of my time as a doctor to come to the hospital to see patients and to write up a management plan for them not to get the medication. So I started asking questions from the clinical manager as well as the hospital CEO to say, what are we doing? Why am I here? What is my role in this hospital if my patients are not going to receive the care that I want them to receive? And that's where my journey for my passion for health systems started. I didn't have the language for it initially. I used to just say, something is wrong, but I don't know what it is. Then I started interacting with my seniors, and they started giving me the language to say, the problem is not that the doctor is not doing our work. It's because the health system is failing us. So I started asking, what is the health system? And then how can I fix it? Because I believed that somebody has to do this and fix it. So that's where my passion then started. So I realized seeing patients is not going to help me. I made the decision, I don't want to see patients. I want to work with the health system. Now, then the conundrum that Dr. Peters and I forget I forgot the name of the doctor who spoke to before Dr. Matthews speaks about this you are this uncertainty that you get, because I've been trained to be a clinician. So now how do I leave my patients? Because being a medical doctor that's what it's all about. It's about you seeing your patients. So how do I then walk away from that? Am I still a doctor, or am I not a doctor anymore? I struggled with that for about 6 months or so, until I spoke to a mentor of mine who said, you know what, Zianda, you are a different type of a doctor, because now your patient is no longer one patient at a time. Your patient is now the population. So you need to rethink about it. You are contributing in a different way. It does not mean that you're not a doctor anymore. It just means that you are playing a different role. And without you, the doctors are not able to do their work. So the moment it dawned on me, then I was unstoppable. I started refining what I'm passionate about. So for me, I didn't want to see patients. I decided I don't want to see patients at all. I actually want to work within normal hours. I want to work from home. I want to be Dr. Matthews. I want to be a computer doctor. I want to trade in my stethoscope for a laptop. So that's what I decided. And once I had made that decision, then it took me on a completely different trajectory. I registered with an agency. At SAMA, it's the agency that we have, we're working with is HPO, Healthcare Consulting, and that is the link over on your screen. But I remember during my times, you would register with Ambition 24, and I would tell them, listen, I'm not interested in doing clinical work, but I'm interested in doing non-clinical work, but I haven't really defined what it is. So what then happened was that I said to them, give me short contracts. So allow me to go into different spaces for short periods of time so that I can just assess what it is that they do. And so I started going into both the public sector and the private sector. So in my quest, I then learned that there is a program that is non-clinical at UCT. I remember going to Prof. London and saying, Prof. London, I heard there's a program called public health medicine, but there's also a program called occupational health medicine. What is the difference between the two? And Prof. London said to me, do you want to see patients or not? And I said, I don't want to see patients. So he said, definitely public health medicine for you. So I went for that program. However, for some of us who still want to do a little bit of seeing patients, occupational health medicine would be the better option. Then I learned that some of with my classmates were working with the NHLS, so you've got your chemical pathology that you can do. You're not patient facing, but you are doing work that contributes to the clinician who's patient facing. So you can think about other careers such as, doing chemical pathology. And you'll see, if you go into the NHLS website, you will see that there is a couple of posts, and you realize that there are some of them that, are not common to us in medical school, because we don't see these people often, but there are many doctors that work for NHLS in various positions. Then, of course, you can be a clinician and still do, if you want to up your skills, let's say in management, or you want to do a bit of research, you can start doing the Master of Public Health, which is you can do small modules, you can do different modules. If you're interested in health informatics, you can do that. If you're interested in research only, you can do that. If you're interested in health systems only, you can start doing that while you are still seeing your patients. It's a part-time type of an opportunity. And then there are other courses, many doctors are now hospital managers, they are CEOs. So you, for example, right now, every tertiary hospital, our minister is advocating that it is managed by a medical doctor. So you've got medical doctors that have got various, either an MBA or public health medicine, or you've done some health management course that allows you to add on to your general degree, MBCHB, and you can then make your way up the hospital management ladder. You can start being a manager manager at a district hospital, you can then grow to being a tertiary hospital. I know some my previous clinical manager at Temba Hospital, for example, is now the HOD of the province in Mpumalanga. So there's many opportunities. Then I've worked for a regulator, which is the OHS, Office of Health Standards Compliance, and I was a director for for healthcare inspections there. I worked for them for about 2 years. And there was another colleague of mine who was also in a different unit within the OHSC, who's a medical doctor, and he was focusing on data analysis and reporting for that. There's another colleague who works for the Office of the Ombudsman, and she is the one who deals with managing the complaints at a national level. So there are various opportunities. At the HPCSA, the registrar right now, the CEO is a medical doctor. At the CMSA, which is the Council of Medical Schemes of Southern Africa, we've got 2 medical doctors that are working there. We also have a medical doctor that's working for the Office of the Auditor General. And then don't forget, you also have an opportunity. If you're passionate about academics, you can also transition into being an academic. You can start off as a lecturer. I know Shrikant and I, we lecture 4th year medical students at UCT, and we've got some of our colleagues that have become associate professors, and they're actually going up the ladder because that's what they are passionate about. In the private sector, I work with amazing doctors in the medical aid space. At Discovery, for example, you will know that Dr. Musima Mabunde is the CEO of Vitality, for example. She was at UCT in my class. So, and then we've got other medical doctors in Discovery working with medical coding, working with research, working with, providing what is called clinical advisory support. So if you look into any medical aid, you'll be surprised what you can find when you search for a clinical advisor, or you just type in medical jobs. You will be surprised what you can find out of there. They are often looking for various skills. You can be a junior doctor, you can be a senior doctor. Then of course the pharmaceuticals. I mean, I don't need to go into there. Some pharmaceuticals are doing different types of researches with medical doctors. The private hospitals, the reason why I put it here, even though I'm talking about non-clinical work, I have worked in a private GP practice, but I was not a clinician. I was actually managing clinicians. I was a practice partner. So there are doctors that actually for example, let's say at Netcare, in the emergency room, you can have a doctor who has opened a practice, and that doctor opens that practice and then employs other doctors to work in the ER. So that person becomes the practice manager, and then the medical doctors come and work under them. So I was doing that. I was in a partnership with a mentor of mine, and we were managing the practice. And what we then did, the hospital would pay us for the month, and we would be then able to pay salaries for the doctors. But we were managing, we ensured that there were clinical guidelines, ensured that we managed the complaints, and we managed the unit itself. So you can do that with the GP practices. You can do that with also clinics. There are various clinics such as Cure, clinics, where you can go in and find out if there are opportunities for you to manage such spaces. Another space I want to bring you attention to is the aeromedical space. I've worked for Netcare 911, and we had I did a little bit of clinical work where I would work with paramedics who would fly out, and when there are car accidents on the N1, we would fly with the helicopter, and pre-hospital I would do management of those patients, and even fly out to different countries in Africa. However, there is an aspect of the aeromedical space that is non-clinical, where I would 3 times, so about 40% of the time that I was there, I was actually doing more administrative work. So interaction with medical aids on some of the work that they do. You would do some paperwork, you would do analysis of the data that's coming in, run the M&Es, do report back, and all of that. Then you've got the NGO sector. So at SAMA, I am doing the advocacy work. You've got other organizations such as COSASA and MSF, where you can be a medical advisor. And then lastly, don't forget innovation. I have met so many young doctors, particularly during this uncertain time, who are just really just innovating and doing what they deem is necessary to ensure that we fix the health system. I met a doctor who is the one who initiated the hospital from home program. So during COVID-19, you remember that some of the patients could not go to hospital. So this doctor created a company and employed doctors, and they would actually go and manage patients from home. The medical aides have actually taken up this program, and they are running with it because it's saving them a lot of money. So those are some of the examples that I can think of. I mean, you know what? There is nothing more powerful, it's been said, more than networking and keeping connected with various people. You've heard from my story that I've had mentors, I've had coaching, I've had seniors that I often spoke to. I ask questions, So if you are stuck, come to the South African Medical Association. We will always be able to point you to someone who may have, a solution or advice or coach you in the direction that you want to go. So yeah, thank you so much and all the best, guys.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sianda. Junior doctors such as ourselves and those who are leading JUDASA have so much to look up to when there are leaders like you in SAMA. Now I'm going to be handing over to my colleague, the chairperson of JUDASA, Ruan Bueta, to take questions for the final session and then to close us off for the morning.
Okay, thank you very much. Especially thank you to our speakers in this session. I just want to quickly see if we have any Q&A. There's nothing at the moment, but otherwise we will share the contact details for all of the speakers of today and their LinkedIn accounts where anyone can reach out to them and ask some questions. Let me just quickly see. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's any questions. So I firstly want to end off then by saying thank you to all of our speakers for today and all the information they've shared with us. I definitely think it's an appropriate day for a conference like this today. It's the National Doctors' Day. And I think this conference really provided information to show us as junior doctors how to improve and to sell ourselves for employment, how to enter the private sector, but also then that it's okay to not want to do clinical medicine. And I think we've explored a lot of options of non-clinical medicine. I think one of the highlights for me and something I've been thinking about now is definitely Dr. Jana Eksten's session. And I think what stood out for me is the humor she brought and the emotion. And I think some of us might have realized that after this 3 years, and especially the community service here, we've become quite blunt and a lack of maybe emotion. And as JUDASA, we recognize this. We are launching our manifesto video, speaking to the circumstances we are working under. And in this video, you'll hear me speak as the chairperson of JUDASA about what we want to do for you and do for our association. Two of the things is that we want to guide and support you. And this is where this conference comes in. I think we're trying to provide you with options, trying to guide you in improving yourself, especially in the challenging circumstances and environment we're working in. And then a third point of what we want to do is we want to advocate for you. So I mentioned in the beginning that we are well aware of the lack of job opportunities, especially in the public sector. And we are busy engaging with the Department of Health. On a personal level, I'm also engaging with the Director of Human Resources at the National Department of Health, trying to see how we can work together with them to try and address these issues. I think that's the important thing for me, is that we work together. But we can't only do this as an association. We need our members. And the more members we have, the more power we have and the more support we will have. And we can take forward these issues, but we can also use our numbers in members to force the department to listen to us. So I want to call on you at the end of this conference to please join JUDASA and to join SAMA. We will put in the chat and we'll send emails to you. And you can also look on all the Facebook and Instagram pages for how to join SAMA and how to become involved. So with that, I want to end off and I want to thank you again for joining us today. Good good luck on this journey post-ComServe. May it be a good journey, and please feel free to reach out to us if you have any concerns, any problems, or anything you want Judasa to address for you. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.